Good evening and welcome to the meeting, the meeting of September 4th, 2024 of the Arlington County Planning Commission. I'm Commissioner Peterson, Vice Chair of the Commission. Tonight, the Commission will consider the following items: PDSP Site Plan Amendment for the Pentagon City Phased Development Site Plan Amendment for the construction of up to 187 residential dwelling units at 1840 Wilson Boulevard, along with ordinances to vacate NSTA, a zoning ordinance to amend, reenact, and recodify to define recovery residence and allow it as a residential use. Before we begin, I would like to share a few logistical points for all participants joining the meeting remotely and in person. For presenters and speakers joining us through Microsoft Teams, please keep your phones and other electronic devices muted until you are called upon by the clerk. Please turn off the sound to any devices around you to minimize interference. Please keep your cameras off until the clerk announces your name to speak. When called upon, you must unmute yourself by clicking on the microphone icon that is in the meeting command bar at the top of your screen. The moderator nor the clerk have the ability to unmute your mic. Once you have spoken, please mute your mics and turn your cameras off. If you are dialing in by phone to join the meeting, press *6 to unmute. Public speakers will be called upon by the clerk at an assigned time. Pre-registration and email confirmation to speak at tonight's hearing was required. We are not able to accommodate additional speakers. All speakers, virtual or hybrid, will receive 2 minutes to comment as an individual. Only representatives of a county board-appointed advisory group, committee, and/or commission will receive 3 minutes to comment. A timer will be displayed on the screen if speaking virtually, and speakers in person will follow the timer stationed on the podium. Audio of tonight's meeting is available via phone. If commissioners, presenters, or speakers lose internet connectivity, please reconnect by phone. However, if you are dialing in by phone and unable to see the screen, we will provide an audible 30-second warning to wrap up your comments. You will be muted when your time has expired. The meeting chat is active for presenters and commissioners who need technical assistance only. Please do not use the meeting chat for discussion, public comment, questions about agenda items, or requests for further information. All public comments must be shared verbally for the record during the assigned public testimony period. Tonight's meeting will be available for review through the YouTube and Microsoft Teams platforms in real time. The links have been provided on the Planning Commission website. The meeting will also be available for review with closed captions on Comcast Xfinity channels 25 and 1085, Verizon Fios channels 39 and 40, 24 to 48 hours after the adjournment of the meeting. Lastly, this is a public forum. Tonight's meeting will be recorded and posted to the county website via a link to YouTube as stated. All information associated with tonight's meeting, whether written or spoken, is subject to the Virginia Freedom of Information Act requirements. Madam Clerk, can you please call the first item?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our first item for the evening is SPLA 23-00021, Site Plan 105, Phase Development Site Plan Amendment for the Pentagon City Phase Development Site Plan, a portion of the land located at 601 and 701 12th Street South. We have Peter Schultz, our principal planner, to present this evening.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is the 12th Street Landing Brookfield TSA item. It's a phased development site plan amendment. Right now, these existing conditions, 601 and 701 12th Street South, were two 12-story office buildings that were constructed in the early 1980s. They used to be the MCI headquarters and then later federal government offices. One building is largely vacant. The second will be vacated soon. It's a 4.5-acre site, and as you can see on the right there, it's just one block of many of the Pentagon City phased development site plan, which we'll be discussing tonight. As you can see, the general land use plan was recently amended by the July County Board action of it readopting the GLUP changes in the sector plan. It's a high office apartment hotel site with a triangle for open space, and the zoning, CO 2.5 zoning regulations have been amended in order to permit the anticipated second wave of development in Pentagon City. Just to bring you up to speed, the Pentagon City Phase Development Site Plan, a PDSP, is a master plan for large sites. What it does is it lays out general block structure, the uses, densities, street network, but it doesn't entitle specific buildings. Basically, it tees up the expectations of what will be coming down the pipeline, all reviewed through the final site plan review process. And there's also design guidelines that are adopted with. The Pentagon City Phase Development Site Plan in the 70s has design guidelines, and it has also been amended many times since the 1970s. Individual blocks, though, can have their own design guidelines, and one of the items we are asking you to approve is to recommend approval of the attached design guidelines for this Brookfield block. The applicant is proposing to amend the overall Pentagon City Phase Development Site Plan, but for this specific site. And it will be in accordance, as you will see, with recommendations of the Pentagon City Sector Plan, and they are asking you to recommend approval of their design guidelines that will guide the development of this site in 3 phases. The sector plan, I'm not going to read that all, but the sector plan anticipates this being one of the densest sites because it is closest to the metro entrance. In fact, there is a metro entrance on the southwest corner of the site. It makes recommendations for public realm, a continuation of the Green Ribbon, a public plaza at the southwest, and accommodations for the transitway on 12th Street. Also a new street on 11th Street. That the developer will partially provide with future development at this site and at the adjacent site. So it's providing guidance for the public spaces and building form here. The developer wants the parcel that they own, the former MCI buildings, to establish 3 land bays for future phasing. So this one half block will be divided up into 3 phases for future development in accordance with the redevelopment of each of the individual buildings. And there's a large underground garage that they will preserve at least the footprint of. They will tell you about that. They are proposing density in line with the maximum recommended density for this site. Uses will be determined at the final site plan, but the developer anticipates that this will be mostly residential. There are 2 scenarios, and those are reflected in the staff report and in the conditions, that could have an office building or a hotel building, depending on future market demand. It's approximately 1.8 million square feet of gross floor area that could be entitled for this site. And of course, as always, we have ground floor retail. The sector plan provides design guidelines, very basic design guidelines, which the developers proposed design guidelines flesh out. But there are basic limitations on lot coverage, minimum required planted areas, requirements that multiple buildings have various heights in order to avoid a flattening effect. And of course, the developers' design guidelines incorporate these recommendations and flesh out some of their thinking in line with the sector plan's recommendations. With regards to transportation, the sector plan wants to break up this block with a new street, 11th Street. So with one half of that new street provided by this development and the other half provided by possible redevelopment, future redevelopment of the DEA site. The developer will provide a usable cross-section of the street that they will access their parking and loading off of 11th Street. So it will be a 2-way street with sidewalks. Designs will be determined at the exact final site plan, and how much of the street will be constructed also, in order to service the future buildings proposed for this site. We also have a protected bike lane on South Fern Street. Public spaces being provided by this plan also implement the recommendations of the sector plan. The developer has some concepts for design of the public plaza and the green ribbon through this site, as well as an extra small plaza at the 12th Street, new 11th Street, which would connect with a crosswalk to future Penn Place. The exact design of those items will be fleshed out during the individual site plan review processes, but what they're proposing is in general line with what we see and expect in the sector plan with regards to location and size. The developer is also going to implement the sector plan recommendations for sustainability. The sector plan does recommend at least LEED Gold, and that any development address community energy concerns. Also, for other community benefits, affordable housing, on-site committed affordable housing should be provided at 10% of the net new residential density over the base. Over the base, I just want to make absolutely clear, because there's 2 existing office buildings that add up to half a million square feet. That's their base density. So the 1.7 million, you take 1.7 million minus 500,000, that's the net new density over the base that they'll have to provide 10% residential, at least for the residential density, not for the commercial density. The developer agrees to all these, incorporated into the conditions of the PDSP approval, and they will be addressed at each individual final site plan. So the developer's proposed features and amenities, and these all implement segments of the sector plan, so I will not reiterate them, but they are all the public open spaces, the transportation improvements. They will work with staff on room for the ultimate transit way build-out, committed on-site affordable housing in the conditions for 30 years, and sustainability per the sector plan goals. So we find that the staff supports the applicant's proposal because they are agreeing to, in conditions and in their design guidelines, to comply with adopted plans. Providing the implementing other county adopted plans, including the public spaces plan, the master transportation plan, and our affordable housing plan and community energy plan. As to show you the public review process, there have been 2 long-range planning committee meetings, not SPRC meetings, because no individual buildings are being proposed with this plan. It is purely an overarching plan of development for the block. We are here at the Planning Commission meeting, and we hope to go to the County Board in 2 weeks. Staff therefore recommends that the Planning Commission recommend that the County Board adopt the ordinance to amend the Pentagon City PDSP and to add, also I should say, recommendation for the design guidelines to the County Board. And I'll be here for any questions. So those were extra slides. Thank you.
Thank you. We're ready for the applicant presentation. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Madam Chair. Our team will give our presentation from here. I'm sure Mr. Striner doesn't want me quite that close to him at the lectern there. Thanks for your time this evening. My name is Kedrick Whitmore. I'm a land use and zoning attorney with Venable LLP. We're excited to bring you this evening the phase development site plan proposal for the 12th Street Landing project. Mr. Schultz gave a really in-depth presentation, so I'll do my best not to repeat what he's already said. Go to the next slide, please. Our guiding principles here, from the beginning, we've really approached the design of this site and our proposal in accordance with county and citizen guidance. The documents we've worked from are both the Livability 22202 study, action plan, and the Pentagon City sector plan. And as you'll see as we walk through this proposal, our design has taken into account these documents as the baseline and fundamental principles that we followed from day one. And speaking of day one, we've been at this for quite a while, ensuring that our proposal is consistent with these documents and the feedback we've received. I won't go through every piece of this slide, but you can see this process began with staff over 6 years ago. And during this time, we've worked to get this proposal in line with the recommendations of the study and of the plan. And what you'll see tonight is really the next step of that process of the sector plan, continuing to refine some of those recommendations, meeting some of those goals with more specific proposals as part of this PDSP. And as Mr. Schultz mentioned, this is only a PDSP. There's not a current final site plan proposed alongside of this. There will be final site plans in the future as we propose individual buildings. Those will continue that refinement, continue to narrow down and add more specificity to our proposals and these requirements. So with that introduction, I'll turn it over to Brian Pilot from Studios.
Thank you, Ked. Excited to be here tonight. Going to quickly go over the existing conditions. Next, please. The image on the left is a site aerial along with photos of the surrounding context. The site is bound by the Amazon site, Costco and the Whitmer to the south, the Fashion Center to the west, and the DEA to the north. Next. As we zoom into the site, this is a drawing of the existing conditions. A few items of note are the existing below-grade garage spans the entire site, so any existing structure or landscape element that is currently on top of the below-grade garage structure. There's also a natural break point at the existing garage running north-south down the center of the site, which has influenced our planning considerations and phasing. The existing metro access easement is also a key consideration to our concept. Next. The existing urban context is illustrated here in this zoomed out aerial with our site in the dashed area. Next. Key elements of the sector plan at our site note for a half acre of open space at the Metro and a continuous green ribbon as noted in the turquoise dots. Next. And as seen here in our macro site plan, it matches this intent of the sector plan with the open green space at the southwest corner adjacent to the Metro and a continuous connector for the green ribbon. As we get into the proposed development program, as noted before, the table in the upper left illustrates our large development program of over 1.7 million gross square feet. I want to highlight that we are only at the PDSP phase, so what you're seeing in the upper right image, those light gray volumes are not building footprints. Those volumes are only establishing the envelope limits and how they meet the sector plan goals for open space and separation along the green ribbon. Per feedback we received during our LRPC meetings, we added the important north-south connection from the green ribbon to the interim 11th Street. And the bottom two diagrams where you see the darker gray volumes illustrate how buildings could be arranged in two alternate options while still meeting appropriate design dimensions for tower separation. Next. Regarding building form, our design guidelines follow sector plan guidance with the incorporation of active ground floor uses, transparent glazing, and transitional space along the building face. Our plan is within the maximum allowable building height maximum for both towers and the podium, and we are meeting the guidance for height difference. Next. Our guidelines also note upper floor step back and sculpting, as well as facade variation at both the tower and the podium. Next. Our concept plan will meet the 25% tree canopy and vegetation total as outlined in the sector plan. Next. And then two final images here that speak to the landscape. Per the green ribbon design guidelines, the path through the site will meet all the required path widths set by the sector plan, including a 12-foot minimum clear path width with the various conditions along each side for planting and frontage. Next. And as the green ribbon moves through the site, the open space has three distinct characters. The node on the northeast corner of the site will have a sense of arrival for those entering the site at this location. The green ribbon segment will be a pedestrian corridor connecting through the center of the site, creating a linear open space. And the public plaza is a half-acre open space activated by the Metro entrance and building frontage on two sides that will create a welcoming entrance from the southwest corner.
Good evening. Can you hear me? Felice Brichter with Grove Slade, and just wanted to cover a few of the transportation elements of the project. You'll see here, this just shows how the site fits into the overall context of the future bike network. So you can see here their future protected bike lanes on Fern Street, Sharrows on 12th Street, and then 11th Street will provide a future two-way cycle track. And we discussed the green ribbon that also provides a path through the site. This slide just shows the proposed parking and service access. As shown in blue, the perimeter of the site is largely uninterrupted with the service and parking access provided for the two north buildings off of 11th Street. The southeast building fronts Fern Street, so parking access for that building will also be provided off of 11th Street, but service access for the southeast building will be provided off of Fern Street as a right-in, right-out, head-in, head-out access. And then this slide just shows some of the some images of the loading situations that that we want to avoid with loading activity occurring in the street, but blocking travel lanes, bike lanes, parking lanes. And then the next slide kind of shows a detail of the curb cut on Fern Street. So this you can see here in detail. Again, this will operate as a right-in, right-out access, head-in, head-out access, with all maneuvering happening internal to the site. And you can also see here the curb extensions provided for the protected bike lane across the access.
Thank you, Felice. So on the next slide here, I'll wrap up with just a couple things about phasing. As Brian mentioned, the phasing is largely dictated by the physical constraints of the site, namely that joint that runs north-south through the site at the garage level and the 11th Street loading and parking access there on the north side of the site. So if you go to the next slide here, we've broken our proposal up into 3 different land bays. You can see them here, again, largely dictated by those physical constraints. And you'll see on the next slide, while we don't dictate as to which will go first, in any event, there will be significant public benefits granted with each of these. If the western phase 701 goes first, we'll provide the open space, and the green ribbon will come with either 601A or 601B. Next slide, please. There is an existing pathway between the 2 sides, the east and west of the site. In the event that the western land base 701 goes first, we will agree to maintain that access until such time as the green ribbon is built with the subsequent phases. Next slide, please. One thing I want to note is this 11th Street right-of-way. Currently, 11th Street is the only loading and parking access for the eastern building, so that if we were to develop only 701, the western land bay, we would propose that future 11th Street only be provided halfway so that we could maintain this loading and parking access to the existing building. Next slide, please. This is another issue with 11th Street. A portion of the final right-of-way is actually owned by the site to the north, the DEA site. So until such time as that site redevelops, we will only be able to provide the portion on our site. You can see here both the interim and the future final condition of 11th Street. Next slide, please. One other item that may factor into our site design is the future of the transitway along 12th Street. This is a drawing given to us by staff that is still in progress. So where that ends up may impact the final dimensions and area of the park. Next slide, please. So very quickly, Mr. Schultz mentioned the community benefits that we're providing. The really nice thing about the Pentagon City Sector Plan is it tells you exactly what community benefits to provide. So there's not a lot of ambiguity around that. We've agreed to all of them. I won't go through each of them here in the interest of time, but obviously happy to speak through any of those in our discussion. And the next 2 slides will just show you how our build-out mirrors the public improvements set forth and called for in the sector plan. And with that, I'll end our presentation, and we're looking forward to any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have, Madam Clerk, do we have any speakers?
We do have speakers. If you could just give me one moment to
course.
reset the clock. Thank you. For those online, if you could please turn your cameras on when I call your name only, and when you finish speaking to turn them off. And also look for the timer on the screen. Hopefully you'll be able to see it. If not, I will be interrupting with the 30 seconds to let you know your time is winding up. Thank you. Our first speaker in person tonight is Stuart Stein, followed by Bernie Byrne. Oh, Mr. Stein, I'm sorry. You're speaking on NSTA, aren't you? My apologies. Bernie Byrne is our only speaker for the evening. Mr. Byrne?
Yes, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank
Yes.
you.
Thank you. Please recommend commission disapproval or modifications of this site plan amendment. The open space section in the staff report states that the project will contain 1, a half-acre public plaza at the southwest corner of the site, near a staircase to the Pentagon City Metro Station. 2, a segment of the green ribbon. This will contain a 12-foot wide pedestrian path and an 8-foot wide planting area. 3, a plaza on Fern Street at the corner of the new segment of 11th Street, opposite a similar plaza at Penn Place. This plan is consistent with recommendations of the 2022 Pentagon City Sector Plan. However, the sector plan failed to acknowledge that several paved plazas already existed near the project site. For example, Pentagon Row Plaza is only 1 block west of this site. Additionally, the planned Pentagon Place project, which will be directly across Fern Street from this site, will contain a large plaza with seating for public events. The project, therefore, does not need to add yet another paved plaza to its area, which Pentagon City really doesn't need, especially because 60% of the green ribbon will also be paved. It's not going to really be green. The public open space at the southwest corner of the site, near the stairs to the metro station, should therefore be a biophilic green park in Mosley, not an impervious paved plaza with a few surrounding plants. The park could contain milkweeds and other plants that support pollinators. The PSDP needs to specify this park. It should not specify a plaza. This would fulfill several recommendations in the County Board's 2016 Monarch Pledge and the county's 2023 Forestry and Natural Resources Plan. The half-acre proposed plaza will not do this. Again, this should be a park and not a plaza, and this PDCB should specify this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I understand that to be our only speaker on item number 1 this evening.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I understand that this was before the ZOCO committee? No, this was not before. LRPC, apologies, okay. Any other, so I want to hear from LRPC. Did any other county commissions hear this item? Transportation? Okay. Oh, I'm feeling frisky. Let's go with transportation first and then LRPC.
Okay, I hope I can remember. It was months ago that we heard this at Transportation Commission, May 2nd. We did vote unanimously to approve this project. The discussion revolved, not surprisingly, around the new bike lane by the new 11th Street, where loading docks and garage entrances are. The discussion, it was more informational. How is this going to work? The commission was very approving of this current plan. The one thing that we did note is that the metro entrance on the corner there is not open all the time, given that right now the building is essentially is barely used, and that if this does get redeveloped, that the developer, the county, and Metro need to coordinate so that the hours of that can be extended to match the other entrances on this intersection, especially given how many people would presumably be living in these new buildings. Other than that, it was very much appreciated how this will fit in with the Pentagon City Sector Plan. Again, it was voted unanimously 11-0 to approve. Thank you.
Thank you very much. LRPC? Oh, Commissioner Patel. You are on mute, Commissioner Patel. Can you unmute yourself, or do we need
Thank
to?
you.
Nope. There you go.
So this matter came before the LRPC on 2 meetings. The first meeting was chaired by myself. The second meeting was chaired by Commissioner Berkey. There were no major issues that came up at either meeting. There's general support, unanimous support, just the same as Transportation Commission. Recognizing that this is coming on LRPC and not an SPRC, the discussion was limited to the objectives of the plan rather than any specifics concerning the green ribbon or the garage. And I think that there's a lot of interest in weighing in on the specifics when a proposal is ultimately on the table. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Patel. With that, the item is with the Planning Commission. Commissioner Patel, are there any particular topics you wish to recommend for our discussion this evening? Or I can also take discussion topics from the floor, so to speak. Not the actual floor,
No.
just the commissioners.
Yeah, no, there's no, Commissioner Berkey wrote a report on our behalf. There's no outstanding issues that were left remaining from the LRPC conversation. Again, I think that people were anxious to be able to kind of dive in on an SPRC when the time is ripe, but coming out of LRPC, there were no outstanding issues that were identified or flagged for further discussion at this hearing.
Thank you. Appreciate that report. As the matter is now with the Planning Commission, any particular topics, any commissioners wish to be heard on this item? Okay.
Can we talk
Mr. Peterson?
about protected bike lanes and the plaza, to Dr. Burns' comments, and building heights, please?
Hang on, I'm writing that down. Bike lanes, plaza,
Building heights.
building heights. Was it, thought there was a fourth one? No? Okay. Yes.
Could we also address what the process will be after this?
Okay. Commissioner Weir? Or was that your? Same question. Same question? Okay. Any other items? Okay, we'll start there. With Commissioner Peterson's indulgence, I think it would be helpful to start by talking about what the next steps are, because I think that that is something that we were definitely hearing from the community as far as sort of what might make sense, you know, whether it's heading into SBRCs or such. So I think we'll actually start with process next steps. And at the risk of speaking for Commissioners Begley and Ware, I think I'm going to direct that question to staff immediately, and then just we can respond to that. So staff, tell us, what happens now?
Sure. Just like with any, let's say, a brand-new, fresh phase development site plan, we've just kind of teed up the phasing, and for them to implement their plan, we hope. They have to submit, just like any other applicant for a site plan, and go through the site plan review committee process, of course, and through the public process. The timeline is up to them. I'll let them speak on what timeline. But I believe our conditions and the report taken into account their proposed phasing and any other alternate phasing that might happen. But it will go through the usual site plan review process. So we will hopefully be in front of you in less than a year's time. Planning Commission hopefully having gone through the SPRC process for the first building on the site.
Commissioner Weir?
Under the category of questions I should know the answer to long ago, what is the advantage to an applicant of submitting and being subject to a PDSP if each of the sites within the PDSP are themselves subject to an independent and fully fledged SPRC? And let me expand the question is not just what's the advantage to the applicant, but what's also the advantage to the county? Like why are we asking applicants to go through basically a two multi-tiered level process and what's in it for them? You would think they would have more flexibility just going one at a time.
Sure. We in the county are actually very flexible, too. If the developer had presented to us a fully fleshed out designed site plan where all three buildings had their architectural features designed and the infrastructure totally laid out, we would certainly have reviewed that. In this case, the developer wished to propose to us just for us to sort of bless their phasing plan. And it actually it was very advantageous for staff to do it this way, I think, also because it like a larger PDSP, it allowed us to think through the implications of phasing. We wanted to know how the entire site was going to work and function with the rest of the Pentagon City PDSP and how it was going to help collectively, once it's all done, implement the plans. And I think if we reviewed the plans individually without going through this process, which is relatively unusual, you know, we don't usually do it this way. Usually they have a specific site plan to show you. But I think the advantage of this is that we were able to see it in totality, how it might finish and how it would dovetail with everything that we want without kind of looking at each individual site and sometimes losing the forest for the trees. Thank you.
I believe Commissioner Weir has a follow-up.
Yeah, and can you just remind me of the respective lifespans of a PDSP and a site plan?
Sure. PDSPs, do not expire when they are approved. As you can see, the Pentagon City PDSP, if you're talking about the time for build-out, the Pentagon City PDSP, which is over 100 acres, has been being built out continuously since 1976, according to the plans. I believe this is on a much shorter timeline than that. But PDSPs do not expire, whereas individual site plans always have an expiration date. That's usually 3 years from the date of approval.
Yeah,
Commissioner, tell me.
yeah, I want to note that we had a similar structure for approving the Pentagon Center a few blocks south just a few months ago. So we have precedent for going through these extra hoops. And for all the reasons that staff has just said, it made sense there also.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Lantelmi. Anyone else wishing to be heard on the process/next steps topic? Okay, bike lanes and transportation generally. I will slightly broaden the topic. Commissioner Peterson?
So my question is about, in the design guidelines from the sector plan, it shows on South Fern Street, protected bike lanes on both sides of the road, but I think the proposal tonight is just on one of the sides going southbound. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes. The developer with this plan will be providing the southbound. Penn Place is going to provide the northbound
Okay.
side.
Great, thank you. That's it for me on protected bike lanes.
I actually have a question then on the protected bike lanes. So what is the likely timing by which, it seems very likely we would have bike lanes in one direction and not the other direction for some indeterminate period of time?
My name's Joanne Gabor with DES for the record. I think I don't want to speculate on timing for development. So if the developer wants to discuss their timing, then we may get some semblance of the southbound bike lane. But otherwise, I'm not going to speculate on when development would move forward, and therefore both bike lanes would be completed.
Okay. Is there a timeline for the, sorry, who's responsible for northbound?
The northbound bike lane is part of the Penn Place development currently,
Okay.
and
Is there a
the-
timeline for that already? Or
There's not.
there's
Again,
not? Okay, not for that either. Okay.
Without the developer here, I'm not going to speculate
Understood.
on when they're proposing to do that.
If the applicant would like to follow up on that, you may. That addressed my question sufficiently.
I don't know that we've got any timeline at this point either.
Anyone else? Transportation stuff?
Yeah.
Bike lanes? Yeah,
Not bike lanes.
that's okay.
Yeah.
You're good.
Yeah. I had a question for staff on the sort of half 11th Street delivery. Do we have like a standard process for that? How well do we envision that working? And then is there any way that we can sort of predict when the next, I guess we can't, but how, it's just that half lane on the back there. I'm not super excited about that idea. Is there anything you can do to help me feel more comfortable with that?
So again, we cannot predict when anyone's going to move forward. I think we all understand that. Perhaps this will give you more comfort. The proposal that would be completed with the TSA project in front of us, it does provide facilities that provide vehicle space, streetscape, some parking on the south side, so on the TSA property. So it would function, as an alley would essentially. Has this worked well in the past? I'm not sure. I want to hypothesize about that either, because I think that's a little subjective. It is something that does come up and has come up in other projects that we do have around the county where we do have property lines with projects that are overlapping. So, philosophically, who should be taking the burden of completing that street? And sometimes it makes more sense for both properties to be taking the burden of the street. And so if one develops before the other, you do end up with only portions of a street. And that has happened. We do a precedent for it. And I think probably if you ask folks around the county, some say it's working well and some may not be as excited about it. So I don't want to speculate on subjective definitions of if it's working well.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I think I'll turn this over to the developer. Anything that you can do to, widen that as much as we can and work with staff to make sure that it's as functional as it can be, being that it's half an alley for the foreseeable future, would be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else on transportation or bike lanes? Okay. Plaza. Commissioner Peterson, did you want to be heard on that item?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask staff, at this point in the process, to Dr. Burns' comments, are we precluded from having a more green park area with less pavement since the park planning process hasn't happened? Or are we is it just, at this point, we know it's just going to be pavement with probably some nice planters, and of course adhering to tree canopy requirements. I think it's 25%.
I don't think anything is set in stone other than the size and location at this time. We can certainly review with any site plan any proposals the developer might have, and then, of course, when it goes through the site plan review committee, suggestions that they will have. We won't have a separate park planning process for this, by the way, because it's too small, so we'll just do it during the SPRC. But I should also point out, Mr. Byrne should know also, there's a minimum 20% tree canopy and 5% ground cover coverage requirement that is unique to new developments in the Pentagon City. So I believe, the developer has an incentive to add some green, but also we have to keep in mind too, this also has a metro entrance on the site. And the green ribbon, while green, is part of our transportation network. So we will try to balance both, and I'm sure the developer is taking on, hearing these comments today, but it's probably going to end up being a balance.
Thank you.
Anyone else on the topic of plaza? Commissioner Weir?
Very likely might end up being an SPRC-specific question, but I am curious in the context of what can and can't be built from the perspective of what can and can't be planted from the perspective of the plaza as how deep the planting beds can be, given that they're over top a parking garage, and what can be done to deliver the most verdant plaza possible, given what limitations may or may not exist with respect to the depth of the planting beds.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's not something we've looked at in terms of the structural issues, right, of either what's there today or what will be there in the future in terms of the garage. I will say that this is a pretty common condition in Arlington County that there's a plaza on top of podium or a structured garage, and we've been able to make that work with planting depths and soil volumes in the past. The other thing I'd add, just to echo what Mr. Schultz said, that this is by virtue of the recommendations of the plan going to be an extremely green site. You can't always see it in what we've shown because we haven't put the trees in and some of the other plantings, but there's going to be a significant amount of green space called for by the plan. And this plaza does have that function of being a metro area, right? And so we do need to be able to balance the inclusion of green space with the walkability and the ability of folks to traverse the site. But to your initial question, Commissioner Weir, that is something we will look at SPRC as part of the analysis of the loads that the garage can bear at that point.
Okay. And the last topic we have is building heights. Commissioner Peterson.
So in the PDSP, it calls for building heights to be varied in order to create like a dynamic, interesting skyline. And what we're talking about tonight is a 10% variance in two buildings. So we could have like 350 feet, 350 feet, and then 320 feet. And so from staff's perspective, do you consider that varied enough to meet the goal of an interesting, dynamic skyline?
It meets the recommendations of the sector plan. When we see specific building plans and have things to react to, maybe we might have further thoughts on that. But we can ask the developer to think about that. But it is meeting the sector plan requirements for varied heights. But it would be interesting to see eventually, future designs and what could be done.
Okay. So stay tuned. And since I'm done asking questions, I just wanted to also say thank you for the adaptive reuse of the parking garage. Super excited to see that. And I look forward to the green ribbon being built out. So thank you.
I will second that on the adaptive reuse with the parking garage. I think that's something that we've really been pushing as a commission, and we're very excited. Also, in a slight preview, the next item on our agenda is also reusing a parking garage. So that's the theme of the evening, I guess. But we are glad to hear that developers are taking our feedback seriously. At least someone's listening. did someone raising a hand? Commissioner Sarli.
I'll associate myself with both the parking garage since it's a theme, but I think the heights, I'd really love to see some significant and real height differences in the building instead of the implied height difference. And I both asked the developer and staff to, be a little bit rigorous on that front. We usually have these heights come in sort of, it's more like a setback and sort of a little bit of a fuzzy line. I'd love to see some genuine sculptural, height alterations going on in the campus, which I think does benefit the site. It allows different light penetration, sight lines from one building to the other, and so on and so forth. So I think there is a little bit of a positive that we ought to highlight instead of just always looking at square footage maximums. So thank you.
So I've been given a good reminder that we should be speaking carefully and closely into our mics this evening. We're in a different room than usual, and I do think that we are getting used to the technology a bit. So just a quick reminder for those of you on the commission, please speak into your, first turn on your mic, then speak into your mic closely. Thank you. Did anyone else want to be heard on this topic or anything else related to the item before us? Okay, in that case, I have not been keeping an eye on our virtual participants. I believe it's just Commissioner Patel who's virtual. Okay. Commissioner Patel, did you wish to be heard on anything? Otherwise, I believe I'd be looking to you for a motion from LRPC.
I'm ready. Yep, I'm ready to go on the motion if we're ready.
Okay. Please make your motion.
Okay, I move that the Planning Commission recommend that the County Board amend the Pentagon City Phase Development Site Plan for a portion of parcel 1C to amend the allocation of uses to permit additional density, to permit additional building height, and to adopt design guidelines for an area known as 12th Street Landing, former MCI headquarters, located at 601 and 701 12th Street South, RPC number 35-004-004 and -006.
Thank you, Commissioner Patel. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Striner had you beat. Sorry. Any discussion of the motion by the commission? Okay. We will move to a vote then. Commissioner Weir?
Aye.
Commissioner Begley?
Aye.
Commissioner Peterson?
Aye.
Commissioner Lantelmi?
Aye.
Commissioner Sarli?
Aye.
Not used to the new layout. Commissioner Striner?
Aye.
Commissioner Guevara? Aye. Commissioner Robertson?
Aye.
Commissioner Patel?
Aye, and I apologize for the Paw Patrol on the background.
I did something about Paw Patrol. I'm reading the description. No problem.
No, I apologize that the Paw Patrol, you might be able to hear Paw Patrol in the background.
Oh,
so
no,
sorry
no,
about
you're-
that when
you're
I was
good.
making my motion.
My toddler recently discovered Paw Patrol as well. Commissioner Steinberger votes aye as well. The motion passes 10-0. I believe that is the only motion on this item, if I'm understanding correctly.
That's
Okay.
correct.
Thank you very much. We appreciate everyone's time on item number 1, and we'll reset and get ready for item number 2.
Item number 2 is SPLN 23-00010, a site plan amendment for site plan 382. This is for the construction of up to 187 residential dwelling units. This also comes with 3 vacations, and the address is located at 1805 Clarendon Boulevard and 1840 Wilson Boulevard. We have Courtney Badger and Betsy Earps to present this item. Thank you.
1 moment, I just wanted to clarify. I apologize. I will have to step away in the middle of the presentation. Commissioner Peterson will step in as chair, and then I will tag back in. It is that back-to-school season, and I have a conflicting thing. Okay, thank you. When you're ready.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Courtney Badger with the County's Planning Division, and tonight I'll be giving a staff presentation on the NSTA site plan amendment. The NSTA item before you consists of a site plan amendment to site plan number 382 and associated vacations to support that amendment. There is an encroachment associated with the project, however, that's only heard and acted upon by the County Board. The site is located at 1840 Wilson Boulevard. It's between Wilson and Clarendon Boulevards, just west of Road Street. Currently, the site is occupied by the office building for the National Science Teachers Association, Roadside Grill, and Il Radicchio Restaurant. A site plan was approved in 2005 by the County Board to demo the restaurant pads and construct an additional 6-story office building on the block. The site plan still governs the site today, and it's valid through 2025. If the site plan amendment were to be approved, that would supersede the 2005 County Board approval. With the 2005 approval, the general land use plan designation and the zoning was changed. The GLUP is designated as medium office apartment hotel, and the zoning is CO 2.5, which is a mixed-use district. The applicant is not proposing to change these further with this application. So as part of the site plan amendment, the applicant is proposing to redevelop the entire site and construct a new 7-story mixed-use building containing 187 residential units and approximately 12,000 square feet of ground floor retail. The applicant will be utilizing the existing underground parking garage containing 110 parking spaces to support this project. There'll be a residential parking ratio of 0.51 parking spaces per unit and a retail parking ratio of 1 space per 747 square feet of retail GFA. With this proposal, there are requested zoning ordinance modifications for the reduction of required parking, additional density, and density exclusions. These are the typical modifications that we see with site plan projects. And the site is within the Roslyn to Courthouse Urban Design Study. You may have heard this document called the ARCUDS, the ROCO, the in-between study. I'm going to be referring to it as ARCUDS for consistency in the presentation, but they're all the same document in case you get confused. This is a primarily urban design document that was adopted by the County Board in 2003 to help guide development in the area between Roslyn and Courthouse. So touching base on some of the staff analysis that went into this project, the ARCUDS has specific site recommendations for the NSTA site. It calls for ground floor retail in either office or residential above. Additionally, there's a series of urban design recommendations such as eliminating curb cuts, expanding sidewalks on all sides, using brick, having pedestrian-friendly facades, maximizing the number of on-street parking spaces, etc., all of which the applicant is doing with this project. The ARCUDS contemplates a tapering scheme for the heights in the area, with higher building heights on the eastern and western ends of the corridor, tapering down to lower heights in the middle. A 5-story height is recommended in the heights plan. However, the plan also calls for this to be studied on a site-by-site basis and for flexibility to be provided, especially when community benefits like affordable housing are being provided. So you can see in the top image the ARCUDS height plan tapering scheme with our site being right here in the middle. And then on the bottom, the applicant's proposed 7-story building in that context. So in addition to the ARCUDS guidance on flexibility and heights, it also has some design recommendations to encourage appropriate dialogue between buildings and the existing residential buildings on Wilson and Clarendon Boulevard, such as there should be an architectural treatment at the 2nd story, as well as a setback and vertical separation or design treatments to improve the building's massing. So looking at the Wilson Boulevard building facade, I'm going to run through some of the design that staff finds appropriate to reduce the building massing and create dialogue with the surrounding buildings and help the building not feel like a 7-story building. So first, the building contains light brick elements that serve to provide vertical breaks along the facade. There's a recess at the second floor level to reduce the massing and create a pedestrian feel. The north and south side of the building contain a courtyard mid-building at the second level. And the top floor is set back, making it feel and look more like a 6-story building. These design elements are carried over on the Clarendon Boulevard facade and the North Road Street facade as well. Additionally, the Road Street facade contains a curve at the corner of Wilson and Rhodes as a tribute and interpretation of the roadside grill building that's listed as notable in the county's historic resource inventory. The county's HRI does not call for a roadside grill building facade to be preserved, but the applicant did work with historic preservation staff to provide the rounded corner and include some glass block as tribute to the building. Looking at the proposed site design, as mentioned previously, the applicant is proposing to maintain the existing below-grade parking garage and the existing alley and parking ramp with the back-of-house uses off of that alley. The retail will be fronting on Road Street and wrapping with entrances on Wilson and Clarendon. And there will be a residential lobby and amenity space on Wilson with residential loft units fronting on Clarendon. Originally, the applicant was proposing to have stoops for the residential loft units on Clarendon Boulevard encroach into the clear sidewalk width. However, during the process, the applicant worked with staff and SPRC members to evolve the proposal to maintain the 8-foot clear sidewalk that's called for on Clarendon. You can see the original proposal on the left with the highlighted stoops in the clear sidewalk and the revised proposal on the right. The project is ultimately able to provide the entire 8-foot clear sidewalk around the entire site and was able to achieve that on this section by a combination of trade-offs that were made to balance the sidewalk, landscaping, and the building. These trade-offs included reducing the size of the stoops, changing the materiality of the stoops, and expanding the length and reducing the width of 3 tree pit planting areas to ensure there is adequate sidewalk and adequate landscaping space. In exchange for the additional density that is requested for this project, the applicant has committed to provide 10 on-site CAF units, 4 one-bedroom units, 3 two-bedroom units, and 3 three-bedroom units. They will also be providing just over $35,000 for contribution for off-site transportation improvements and participating in the Green Building Incentive Program at the 0.35 FAR level. This site plan went through the standard SPRC process, including online engagement, walking tour, and 2 SPRC meetings. It was heard and approved unanimously at the Transportation Commission last week, and it will be heard by the Housing Commission later this week and the County Board on the 14th. Also, as part of this project, there are 3 requested vacations to support this site plan amendment. They're located along Wilson and Clarendon Boulevard, as shown on the maps here. The vacations are currently being used mostly as sidewalks with some grassy areas behind the sidewalk. Any new additional easements required for the project will be dedicated as part of the site plan projects. And the portions of easements to be vacated are not specifically shown on the MTP, which is a component of the comprehensive plan, but are located adjacent to and run parallel with the arterial B streets, Wilson and Clarendon Boulevard, that are shown on the MTP. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission recommends to the County Board the adoption of the site plan amendment ordinance, and that you find the proposed vacations in accord with the comprehensive plan. Thank you.
Thank you. And do we have an applicant presentation?
We do. Madam Vice Chair, let me share my screen if I may. Okay. Why that didn't work. All right. Not going to touch this. I'm just going to leave it. Well, thank you very much. Good evening, Commission members. My name is Andrew Painter. I'm a zoning attorney at the law firm of Walsh Colucci, speaking tonight on behalf of the applicant Fortis Companies. I am joined by our entire team. To my left is Alicia Buck with Cooper Carey. They are a project architect. Brian Eskew is with Fortis. Lauren Riley is with Walsh Colucci. Mike Rokowski is with Wells & Associates, our traffic consultant, and Jeff Krebs is our landscape architect with FICA Virginia, which is our civil engineer. We have other team members online as well to answer any questions. I want to thank staff for its hard work on this request, both with the vacations and the transportation issues and the 4.1. I think at its essence, this proposal seeks to take a major step forward in realizing the long envisioned redevelopment of this site in accordance with county policies. Ms. Badger did a good job summarizing the application, so I'm not going to repeat what she said. I do have a couple slides, though. I want to highlight a couple points. This is an image that I like that just shows the context of the site relative to the two neighborhoods that this is equidistant to. You can see the proposed building in yellow. You can see Roslyn on the right-hand side of the screen and Courthouse on the left-hand side of the screen. And what I like about this is that it really does show the county's bullseye planning concepts that it adopted in the 1970s when Metro Rail was first coming. And it shows that it's been a phenomenal success story. And the pieces that are left are now what we're kind of focused on from a planning perspective, really kind of moving from that bullseye concept to potentially a more spinal concept. And this, between the boulevards, Clarendon and Wilson, this is a good spot for density in an area of the county that has the infrastructure to accommodate it. As Ms. Badger mentioned, this site is subject to a 2005 site plan for the National Science Teaching Association. And what that site plan envisioned was retention of the existing NSTA building and a brand new building in the parking lot and where Il Radicchio and Roadside Grill are located. Obviously, and we all know what happened due to the pandemic and just office needs generally, NSTA decided it no longer needed that amount of office space. Ford has purchased the property in late 2022. And when they purchased it, they engaged us and the architect and the rest of our design team to really start thinking about what this site wanted to be, in the future. What was the highest and best use of the site, and how could we accomplish some of or realize some of the county's goals. What we did through a visioning process is really come up with 4 design drivers. And these design drivers are kind of the box that we put all of the design decisions into and computed out the answer to about how it affected this. So just from top to bottom, the first one was to redress the county's deficiency of housing. This is clearly an area of the county generally that needs more housing. Second is to complete out the urban design intent of the county's various land use policies, thinking streetscape, MTP, height density with the urban design study that Courtney mentioned. Third was to deliver ground floor retail and restaurant opportunities that were originally envisioned but never realized because, by the prior 2005 site plan because it never came to fruition. And last but not least is to create a meaningful physical and social meeting place between the two neighborhoods. And that is something that's specifically called out for in the urban design study. And so you can see how we've responded to that. We filed our application in May of 2023. We actually availed ourselves of the county's conceptual site plan process, which not everybody does, but as I mentioned during Transportation Commission, we felt it was a very thoughtful and informative process and really helped address a lot of the zoning and planning issues that drove our ultimate design that we filed. And we do appreciate many of you all coming to the 2 SBRC meetings that were held. I think all of that together, we incorporated a lot of feedback, and we are proud with the evolution of the project. So what is proposed is a 7-story building, about 180,000 square feet, 187 residential units, just shy of 12,000 square feet of ground floor retail. We are availing ourselves of the Green Building Incentive Program at the 0.35 FAR level. This is an axonometric diagram of sort of the building program. So you can see at the ground level, you're sort of building from bottom up, the preservation of the 3 levels of below-grade parking. That obviously has an enormous environmental benefit, including embedded carbon. It's a huge cost savings as well. Makes sense all around. On top of that is the ground floor uses. You can see in red the retail restaurant area fronting along North Road Street and then wrapping along Clarendon Boulevard and Wilson Boulevard. You can see an orange section, which is the hotel amenity area, the residential amenity area and lobby. And then fronting along Clarendon on the other side is the line of those loft or liner units. There's 4 units that have direct access on Clarendon Boulevard. And that really picks up on a design cue from the 1919 project immediately to the west, and it helps with streetscape activation as well. And then on top of that is 6 levels of residential. This is a plan view diagram, and I wanted to show this just to show the streetscape enhancements that are coming with the project, including the landscaping, the courtyards, et cetera. I will say that we exceed the tree canopy goal and the tree replacement requirements for this project. I also wanted to show this to highlight the alley that's on the west side of the proposed building. This is an existing alley that provides service and loading for both this building and for the 1919 building to the west. And then there's also a protected pedestrian zone of about 4.5 feet between columns that are on, protected from the vehicle alley by a series of columns. So we'll be providing that, and that provides a good mid-block crossing. And then I wanted to talk really quickly about the architecture of the site. Alicia can talk in droves about this, and I'd like to recognize her during question and answers. But our design philosophy from the very beginning really has been anchored in two principles. The first is compliance with the recommendations of the urban design study in terms of height, building, and mass. And the second has been to have quality facade materials and a design that echo elements of both Colonial Village to the north and the roadside grill, albeit with sort of a modern twist to it. So what you're looking at here is Wilson Boulevard, looking westbound as though you're leaving Roslyn. The Exxon station is on the left-hand side of the screen where the gray silver car is. And you can see the curve, at the corner of Rhodes and Wilson that Courtney had mentioned. Again, that architectural nod to the existing roadside grill. It almost has, dare I say, streamlined, modern view to it in a little bit of a way. This is a closer-up version of that, and you can see the high-quality brick materials that we're using. It's a little hard to see here, but we have incorporated, as Courtney mentioned, some glass block, which if you've gone to Roadside Grill, you've seen the glass block embedded in the walls as you enter in the doors. You can also see the indentation as well, which is something that's called for in the urban design study to have some sort of architectural dialogue with the Colonial Village apartments across the street. This is a view as though you're standing at Colonial Village, looking directly across Wilson Boulevard. And what I want to highlight here is right where you see 1840, that is the lobby entrance. And then you can see the lobby area continues through that glass area below those shade awnings on the in the courtyard. That's where we have our apartment elevators and our stairs. And we're hoping to have a lot of interior and exterior visual porosity with, some sort of artwork or something of visual interest for people that are passing by. And this is looking at the building, from the northwest, looking towards the southeast. You can see the alley. You can see the pedestrian zone on the other side of the columns that, again, provides that mid-block crossing. Now we're on the other side of the building along Clarendon Boulevard, as though you are at where the Bromptons are located, looking northeast. You can see the alley in the foreground, and then you can see those liner loft units as well. And this is looking directly across the street at Clarendon Boulevard. What I want to point out here is that those loft units do break up the facade. They do provide the streetscape activation. And then we also incorporated, from a biophilic perspective, the green climbing walls on the side of the building as well to help sort of cool down, the experience as you walk by. And the last architectural image I'll say is looking westbound along Clarendon Boulevard as you look up towards the courthouse neighborhood. Courtney had mentioned the green building incentive policy. Not going to spend a lot of time talking about that. Suffice to say, again, is at the 0.35 FAR level. This will be an all-electric building except for the backup generator. Energy Star score of 80, 25% reduction from the ASHRAE baseline, et cetera. So we will have to meet all of those baseline prerequisites plus the additional 3 extra credit list items. From a transportation perspective, it's a little hard to read here, but there are the streetscape improvements, the sidewalk improvements. We are closing down 2 of the existing driveways. We're maintaining the alley. We have parking ratios that are in line with county policies that are proximate to Metro Rail stations. And then we have a series of bike parking and bike infrastructure improvements as well. And I'll close on this slide with the community benefits. I won't rattle them all off, but I will say from an affordable housing perspective, there's really 3 tiers of affordable housing that we're providing here. First, we have the base contribution, which again is a cash contribution or on-site units. That'll be decided at a later point in time. Second is the bonus density contribution, which we have. And then third, there was an UPGLUP with the 2005 zoning case, but they did not assess an UPGLUP. If I may just have another couple of minutes, Madam Vice Chair.
You actually have 30 seconds.
Oh, thank you. Mm-hmm. They did not assess an UPGLUP contribution at that time, so we are now paying that. So altogether, we have 10 on-site committed affordable units. And that includes 2 2-bedroom units and 3 3-bedroom units, which we worked out with staff. So I would say in closing, Madam Chair, I think planning at the end of the day is all about a balance. I think that has been achieved here. We've worked very hard. We appreciate all the input that stakeholders have had, and we're proud of the evolution of the project. So we're all happy to answer any questions that you all may have, and thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much. Do we have public speakers tonight?
Oh, Lord. Sorry. That was the backup in case the timer didn't work while we were in here for the first time tonight. Sorry about that.
That's an intense backup.
Yes. Stuart Stein is our first and in-person speaker.
Okay, Mr. Stein, you have 2 minutes.
Has been very important in the development of our community in the Rayfam area. The project is in many ways just the type of building that was envisioned by the plan and the planners that wrote it. We would prefer it was 6 stories, not 7, which would be more appropriate for the taper envisioned and the specifics of the plan. Otherwise, this project is very much in the spirit of the in-between study. Parking is always a concern of ours, and we feel that it could be a higher ratio, although we appreciate that it's not lower than this. And we also greatly appreciate the retention of the current parking garage. Many residents in our community have expressed their desire for the roadside grill and El Radicchio to find homes in the new building. They are not only extraordinarily popular in our community, but we have many Arlington County residents from other areas. I've been told that there are discussions with one and plans to reach out to the other. We hope these discussions lead to both restaurants remaining in our community. We're very happy to see affordable units being provided on site. This is something we always ask for and greatly appreciate. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Bernie Byrne.
Yes, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. Please recommend disapproval of the site plan amendment. The building's footprint is too large. There is not enough open space near the building for plantings that support pollinators. The project will not be biophilic. The building needs a green roof. Flowering vines should hang down from the roof and terraces and should climb up from the ground on terraces. We don't see this. The preliminary plant list has many deficiencies I've written in my longer letter. One plant, sedum speculum, is native to China and Korea. 4 others are native to the U.S., but not native to Arlington's area. Each may not feed native pollinators. All may become invasive. 6 are wind-pollinated ornamental grasses. These do not provide nectar, which feeds adult pollinators. Grasses cannot feed them. The list contains common milkweed and butterfly milkweed. These will feed monarch caterpillars. However, ornamental grasses will comprise about 42% of the total number of herbaceous plants. This percentage is much higher than the 25% limit that a U.S. Department of Agriculture publication recommends. Decrease the number and percentages of grasses. Many plants are cultivars. However, most cultivars attract people, not pollinators. Some are sterile. Pollinators can't feed on nectar and pollen and the pollen of the cultivars. Replace all cultivars unless they are more resistant to disease than their parents. The plant list contains Lafayette American elm. This cultivar has some resistance to Dutch elm disease. However, only 67% survived for 10 years in the National Elm Trial, which ended in 2015. In contrast, 86% of New Harmony cultivar and 82% of the Princeton cultivar survived for that long. Investigators therefore preferred them in their paper. Therefore, replace Lafayette and New Harmony. Replace Lafayette with New Harmony or Princeton. It's important to plant the right elm. If you're going to take the risk of a DED-resistant elm, you should plant the right ones. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was our last speaker.
Okay, thank you. Do we have commissions that want to speak tonight? No commissions. Transportation?
Yes, this was heard at last Thursday's Transportation Commission meeting. The discussions involved the bike lanes, the proposed bike lanes, the parking ratio, the garage reuse, the pedestrian environment, and it was all very positive. There's significant additions to the bike lane network along Clarendon Boulevard and Road Street. The parking ratio is acceptable, and there was a lot of very happy about the garage reuse. Pedestrian, the sidewalks were, we were all very, very happy that a good compromise was found to have a full width sidewalk along Clarendon Boulevard, in addition to keeping the tree pits and trees along there, because there was concern because the stoops needed to be there for those 4 units or 3-4 units that open right, for the loft units that open right out onto the sidewalk, that there wouldn't be enough room for a full width sidewalk. Everybody worked together, and the compromise was to shrink the tree pits a little bit and to redesign the stoops so that we were able to preserve the units there, which had to be there because of the way the garage is configured, and the trees. So all around, that was a really good solution that everybody was quite happy with. The easements were found to be not inconsistent with the master transportation plan. So the Transportation Commission did vote unanimously to recommend the approval of the site plan and to recommend the 3 easement vacations as being not inconsistent with the master transportation plan. And if you might indulge me for a moment, the meeting was also notable because it was the final meeting that Chris Slatt was participating as a member of the Transportation Commission. His final meeting as chair was in July, and now the new chair is Aidan Maradovic, but he participated for one last one. He has been on the Transportation Commission for 13 years, served 10 years as chair, and if anybody is interested, September 17th, there will be a meeting ceremony honoring him at the county building. So just wanted to pass that along, having known Chris. The work he's done as chair of the Transportation Commission, people don't quite realize how much has changed in how we view transportation in this county, and a lot of that has been because of his leadership. So anyway, just thank you for indulging me on that.
Sure. Thank you. Okay, and now I want to turn to Commissioner Guevara for the SPRC report.
Thank you. Overall, the project was well received. From the initial SPRC to the second one, the community seems to have felt like there was significant changes, and the applicant was receptive to their feedback. One of the things that we appreciated was the existing underground garage was going to be kept for the new sites, which presents significant cost savings and energy savings for the project. I won't go into detail about the stoop and the sidewalks since Commissioner Lentelmi already went through that. One of the other major points for the community was the dog relief areas and what could be achieved given the constraints that are there. One thing that the community really welcomed was the on-site affordable units. And another thing they mentioned was if there was some way to encourage the current businesses to return, but it was unclear if that was feasible. And by the current ones, I mean the restaurant, Roadside Grill, and so those were the primary points of discussion.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Guevara. So I have for possible discussion topics for tonight, tree plantings and streetscape, on-site affordable housing units, pet relief areas, and building height. Does anyone want to add to that list? Yes, Commissioner Striner.
We had something about the roof.
the roof.
Does this thing work? Okay, it's
Okay.
working. Okay.
Okay, anything else? Okay, why don't we start? Anybody have questions or comments about tree plantings and or streetscape? Commissioner Bagley.
You know, a lot of things have been accomplished over the years by Dr. Byrne being on almost all of these meetings to a point where most of us have his script memorized. However, he always points to things that we should try to be better at. So in the tree plantings, he did mention some species that, you know, will do better than not. So since that is, you know, a confined area and we have agreed on smaller space, am I correct in assuming that some of the things that he mentioned will be on your list?
I have to defer to Jeff, but I'm getting the nod. Yes, Jeff?
Absolutely. And ultimately, the county will determine which species of tree goes into the trees, go onto the streetscape, but we're in complete agreement with Dr. Burns' suggestions about plants.
Thank you. Any additional questions on this topic or comments?
I'll make a quick comment. I just want to appreciate, and I want to make a habit of expressing appreciation when an applicant doesn't approach a problem with there's no way to fix this, right? So I really appreciate that you guys were willing to look at the tree pits. Staff are always willing to work with the applicants. And I just really, really, really want to encourage, you know, all our applicants to do the same. It's like when we bring something up, don't just immediately say that's impossible. There's no way we can accommodate that. It's absolutely out of the question. And in this case, I feel like, you know, when everybody works together, we get a really good solution. And I think this is a really good solution as far as the sidewalk width goes.
Other comments, tree planting or streetscape? Okay, next topic, on-site affordable housing units. I will just comment, thank you very much for providing these units on-site, in particular the 3-bedroom units for families. Thank you. Other comments, Commissioner Guevara.
I would like to associate myself with that comment as well. We keep harping on having on-site affordable units, and the fact that you guys are providing 3 bedrooms as opposed to just a 1 or 2 bedroom, I think really speaks a lot to your commitment to the community. And I also want to thank the civic associations as well, because they were very supportive of having affordable units there. So I want to thank you for that.
And if I may take a matter of just indulge for a second. Our initial proposal that we tried to work out with, or that we worked out with housing staff, and it was pretty much a sealed deal, had far fewer 3-bedroom units. I think we had 1 3-bedroom unit at the time. In our last resubmission, we worked with Courtney, we worked with Aaron Schreiber, we worked with Alex McMillan with housing, because we were able to find a way to get more units. And if you look at the total unit breakdown, this is heavily weighted. The building itself is heavily weighted towards 1 bedrooms. We only have 7 3-bedroom units. 3 of those 7 units are going to be affordable. So it's, yeah.
I just have a quick follow-up. What percentage of level is the units going to be for AMI?
Those will be at 60% AMI for a period of 30 years.
Okay. Is there a possibility of doing, I know Commissioner Berkey in the past has said maybe we could do 50% and some at 70 or some at 80 and others at a lower percentage point? Is that a possibility at all?
Yeah, that's not something that we've explored. We're kind of going with what the county's standard, committed affordable unit expectations are, but for
Yeah, our 60% AMI at 30 years is our standard condition. We could look at different things on a case-by-case basis, but that's our county standard that we go with.
Commissioner Striner, did you have a comment?
It was answered with the last one.
Okay, great. Thank you. Next topic.
Commissioner Peterson, can I just
Commissioner
follow up
Patel.
on that? Thank
Yes.
you. I apologize. I just wanted to follow up on that line of questioning by Commissioner Guevara. I think that we have asked, and this may go to staff, I think we've asked frequently here to really evaluate ways to mix that percentage up, because we have good information now from the Community Foundation that says that we're pretty saturated at the 60% AMI level. So is there a way for us to start, and what is our role here as Planning Commission to really facilitate, significant movement in that direction, so that when the county is asking for affordable units, the understanding is if we're not going to be going lower than 60%, that we are really looking at a mix of those ratios.
Yeah, so our negotiations and as we approach affordable housing is based on our affordable housing master plan that is adopted by the county, which calls for units at 60% AMI for 30 years. So I can take that back to our housing staff and have that conversation, but that's kind of what we base it off of. It's the approved county policy.
Thank you, because I think I feel like we just keep pushing in this direction, but maybe don't necessarily have a solution. And I do applaud the applicant for increasing the number of affordable units, particularly at those units that are larger size for our families who could avail themselves of housing in a very vibrant, robust, transit-rich area. But nonetheless, the report on that was just recently issued by the Arlington Community Foundation, I think is really important for us to be able to use that real-time data and start thinking beyond where we currently are on our conditions. So thank you for that. Thanks for answering that question. And thanks for your commitment about addressing how we can look forward.
Thank you, Commissioner Patel. Pet relief areas. Yes, Commissioner Bagley.
So I recall at one of the meetings that this was a major question by some of the neighbors who there's an adjacent space in that area where it's not well kept and people are already using it with their pets. So for anyone there who will have a dog, what are you instructing them to, where does that relief effort go?
I'd like to recognize Alicia Buck with Cooper Carey. She can answer that, and maybe Brian wants to chime in as well.
Yeah, so I do recognize that that was one of the comments that came up. We have done pretty extensive exploration in terms of our outdoor areas in the building and really have not been able to find an area that would be adequate for pet relief within the footprint. We explored introducing pet relief area in one of the two courtyards. Unfortunately, because of the way the mass has shaped through our coordination with the county and trying to have a courtyard on the south as well as a courtyard on the north, the courtyards are really constrained in terms of their square footage, and there really is not a good way to have pet relief and also have people amenities in those areas. We also looked at putting an area down along the alley. Again, that's going to be a heavily foot trafficked area and really wasn't suitable for pet relief as well. So we've done a pretty extensive exploration and trying to find a way to make that work within the footprint. And unfortunately, we've just not been able to find a good way to solve that problem. Now, we do have, obviously, the public right-of-way immediately outside along the three sides of the building, as well as the public park that's diagonal across the southeast corner. So our hope is that our residents will be able to utilize those for pet relief.
So so you're not outlawing dogs there?
No, and I believe that, I think it was a 50, I can't remember what it was, a 25 or 50 pounds.
Yes. No, I mean, we would allow pets, but we would have standard restrictions that you would see from, property managers. We'd be using a national property manager that would have standard breed restrictions. It's not really a weight restriction, it's more breed restrictions in place. And the only thing I would add to Alicia's comments, we will have pet stations around the property. And then, of course, the property will be, professionally managed. And so we'll have a staff that will, actively maintain the spaces and keep the spaces clean of any, pet residue. So I think, that's all I can really add on those points.
So if there's a public park there, if most of the animals want to have a little bit more space to run around, one can presume that they will go to the public park. So whose responsibility does it become then for added cleanup? I'm just, if you could have 100 and some dogs in there that wouldn't necessarily have been part of this whole scene up until now. So I'm just curious because the neighbors did ask about it and were concerned about it, so.
I don't know if staff has anything to add, but I would assume that would be the case with any private facility that's coming up. It would be on public property. The law clearly states that individuals are responsible for the maintenance and the waste of their animals. If not, it becomes a public, it's up to the public to clean it up. It's no different than any other apartment.
Okay. Any other topics on pet relief?
Commissioner
Questions,
Patel
comments?
has her hand up.
Commissioner Patel.
Ironically enough. So as a frequent user of that park, because shout out to Las Primas food truck for their amazing tacos over there, that public park is used pretty frequently by a lot of people and a lot of animals. So I don't know, like if there's no opportunity for people to have space there to make sure that their animals are, have a place and that they're cleaning up, I think that you're going to naturally see the overflow happen in that park. And so I kind of align myself with Commissioner Bagley's comments. I would be concerned about the upkeep and the cleanliness of that. It's a small park. I mean, it's not really that large.
I'll just ask the applicant, do you all provide like doggy bags around your building so that hopefully somebody takes the bag that they can then clean up after their pet?
I would presume, and I'll defer again to Brian, but we will have pet stations within the building itself, and as part of that, including the wash stations and things like that, I assume that there would be bags for residents to be able to take and use.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, nothing really to add, but we would have stations around the property, have the dispensers with the bags and the trash cans, and of course, we provide that for the residents and the community.
Commissioner Bagley.
Since it is a public park, perhaps just in whatever information you provide to tenants, that, it is a public park across the street, you're welcome to use it, but, just a little bit of education about etiquette, I think would go a long way to help in the neighborhood.
We can agree to that.
Yeah, I'm sorry to keep belaboring this pet relief conversation, but the pet washing stations and all that stuff, that's really for the cleanliness of the interior of the building, right? It's not really ensuring that things are maintained outside of the building. So I do appreciate, obviously, that you're going to have landscaping and maintenance of the property outside. But I wonder, and I don't know what the answer to this question is, but if you start to notice that there's a lot of animals across the street at the park and there's a lot of waste that's accumulating as a result, is there some, I guess, commitment then at that point that landscaping would extend to over there?
I don't think
directly affect.
I don't think that we'd be prepared to make a commitment to that right now. I think we'd also have to find out exactly where the waste is coming from. Again, that seems to be more of a public responsibility at that point, because this is not the only property that would be using that. It would be any number of residents that are in proximity to this park that are also walking their animals in that location.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, right? And obviously nobody's going there to check what the waste level is right now as compared to what the waste level is going to be. But I agree. I mean, it's going to be a public responsibility, but I do worry about what that's going to mean in terms of that public amenity.
Thank you, Commissioner Patel. Any final comments? Okay, then let's go to building height. Comments, questions? Okay.
I think that the height here is appropriate. One additional story is not really violating the spirit of the design guidelines. With the setback, it isn't going to be visually as massive as it would be if it was going right out to the building line. So I'm very comfortable with this. I think we get additional units out of it. So I think it's appropriate, and I'm happy with it. Overall, I really like the architecture of this building. It's a very sophisticated design. It's going to be a real addition to the corridor. And I very much thank the applicant for preserving the look, if not the actual facade, of the roadside grill. And Commissioner Casoli would correct me, but I think that is an art moderne of design. And I think that it is, I always felt it as one of the landmarks along Wilson Boulevard, and preserving that was important to me. And really done a very, very good job of doing that. So overall, the height, the massing, I think it's very well done. And it's going to be a good completion to that long block from Road Street up to Courthouse. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lantelmi. Finally, roof, top questions, comments about the roof. Commissioner Streiner.
Well, first of all, I'd like to associate myself with Commissioner Lantelmi's comments. It was a nice touch, keeping the rounded structure there from roadside, and a lot of the glass blocks too. You really did your homework on that, I could tell. So piggybacking after Dr. Burns' comments, was there any sort of consideration that what could be done on the roof? Maybe some solar panels for an on-site energy generation, green roof, that kind of thing. Were there any sort of, because at this point, we can bake that into the site plan because it's already being approved. We're not adding anything to the structure, but is there anything we can do on the roof right now that could add to the sort of sustainability of the site?
Commissioner Starner, that is something that we have looked at. We are leaving those options open. Defer again to Alicia.
Yeah, I think at the very least, we've committed to having off-site solar.
Okay.
And we are also actively considering putting the solar on the roof paired with the green roof underneath.
Awesome.
That's an open item under consideration.
And I believe that would be a minimum of approximately 12% of the roof area would have been green roof if that option was pursued.
That's awesome. Yeah, and then additional just kind of popped into my head. Is there any sort of, since the parking garage is being preserved, which is amazing, are there any EV accessibility changes that you all are adding to this site, or is it just going to stick with what's already there?
We will be having, we will be pursuing electric vehicle charging, 4% EV, ready day one, and I think an additional 15%.
15 infrastructure.
Right. So I think those numbers, I have those numbers actually down here too.
Okay. 15% accessible?
50% EV ready, so those will be
EV
18
ready.
spaces, and 4% day one, so that'll be 5 spaces.
Got it. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Any other questions or comments about the roof? Did you have something you wanted to add?
No.
Okay. Okay, so then I think we are ready to go to motions. Commissioner Guevara, do you have a motion for us?
I do. Recommend that the Planning Commission, the Planning Commission recommend that the County Board adopt the attached site plan amendment ordinance for SPLN 23-0010, SP 382, to permit the construction of up to 187 residential dwelling units and up to 11,948 square feet of commercial retail, with modification of zoning ordinance requirements, including additional density, residential, and retail parking ratios, density exclusions, and other modifications necessary to achieve the proposed development, located at 1840 Wilson Boulevard, subject to conditions of the attached ordinance. And then I have a vacation motion.
We have to do them separately, the vacations? Yes. Okay, yeah, we'll do
I think
so.
this vacation has to go first, right?
Does the vacation go first? No. Okay, no. Okay, so Commissioner Guevara has introduced a motion. Does anybody second it?
I'll second.
Second.
I heard Commissioner Lantelmi first. Any discussion about this motion? Okay, so then we will go to vote in alphabetical order. Commissioner Bagley?
Aye.
Commissioner Guevara?
Aye.
Commissioner Lantelmi?
Aye.
Commissioner Robertson?
Aye.
Commissioner Sarli?
Aye.
Commissioner Streiner?
Aye.
Commissioner Weir?
Aye.
Commissioner Patel?
Aye.
Not in alphabetical order, but just, virtual versus in person. Okay, and then me, aye. Commissioner Peterson. Okay, that passes 9-0. Do we have a second? Can we do all 3 vacations at the same time? Okay, yes. So Commissioner Guevara, do you have a second motion? And I think if you read all 3 of them at the same time, we can just do
Yes.
one. Okay.
Yes. So find that the proposed vacations of portions of street and utilities easements and sidewalks and utility easements related to Site Plan Amendment 382 located at 1840 Wilson Boulevard and 1805 Clarendon Boulevard are substantially in accord with the adopted comprehensive plan or applicable part thereof.
Okay, does that sound, okay, second?
Second.
Commissioner Striner. Any discussion? No? Okay, we'll go to the alphabetical list again. Commissioner Bagley.
Aye.
Commissioner Guevara.
Aye.
Commissioner Lantelmi.
Aye.
Commissioner Robertson.
Aye.
Commissioner Sarli.
Aye.
Commissioner Striner.
Aye.
Commissioner Weir.
Aye.
Commissioner Patel.
Aye.
And Commissioner Peterson, aye. Once again, passes 9-0. Is that the end of our agenda item, Madam Clerk?
Yes.
Are there any other motions that anybody wants to introduce or? Okay, so then we are done with that. Madam Clerk, can you call the third agenda item of the night? Oh, thank you very much to the applicant and staff for your presentations tonight.
Item number 3 is ZOA-2024-05, an ordinance to amend, reenact, and recodify numerous zoning ordinances. And this is for the recovery residents. We have Cliff Hogan to present this item this evening from our zoning office.
Thank you. As Giselle said, my name is Cliff Hogan. I'm with the Zoning Division, and I am here to provide information about a proposed zoning ordinance amendment that the Zoning Division is taking through to the County Board. Just a quick overview of what we'll be touching on this evening. First of all, what we're doing. So this is a zoning text amendment, and as was mentioned, there are multiple sections of the zoning ordinance that are being amended, but the four main things that our amendment will be doing is creating a definition for recovery residence that identifies it as a use. We'll be making some modifications to the household living and group living residential use categories to clearly identify this as a type of household living use. We'll also be making modifications to the principal use tables, which would allow recovery residences to be located in essentially any zoning district that allows one-family detached dwellings. And lastly, we'll be creating a use standard that will allow recovery residences with 8 or fewer residents in a one-family detached dwelling by right, and with a use permit option for, sorry, am I like not speaking? And then an option for recovery residences with more than 8 residents and or located in dwelling types other than one-family detached to be permitted contingent upon approval of a county board use permit. So just as some background, the impetus for this text amendment was a reasonable accommodation request that was submitted to the zoning administrator by Oxford House Incorporated. In that reasonable accommodation, they were seeking to allow a recovery residence with 8 residents to occupy a single-family house. Just as something to keep in mind, this is one of the factors that shape the scope of what we were doing with this text amendment. We also have been working with our colleagues in the Department of Human Services. Unfortunately, they were unable to join the hearing tonight, but they did provide us with some information about substance use and abuse in the county, and how this proposed amendment will essentially aligns with the work that the Department of Human Services does. As far as what a recovery residence is, this is the definition in the Code of Virginia for what a recovery residence is. But essentially, it is it's a household that provides drug-free and alcohol-free living to persons who have substance abuse disorders, who are trying to maintain a sober lifestyle. These are they're not licensed as certain other types of congregate living uses that are allowed in the zoning ordinance, but they are certified by the Department of Behavioral Health and Human Services. Behavioral Health and Developmental Services. So the way this certification process works is essentially there is the Office of it's called the Office of Recovery Services. They are part of, again, the Virginia Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Services. They perform the certification, and what they do is they maintain a list of certified recovery residences throughout the entire state of Virginia. And in order to be listed on that listing of certified recovery residences, a recovery residence needs to do an annual certification. And so what happens is this annual certification will be submitted to DBHDS, the Office of Recovery Services, and as a part of that certification process, you have to be operating your recovery residence under one of two recognized credentialing agencies in the state of Virginia. Those are the Virginia Association of Recovery Residences, and the other one is Oxford House, or an Oxford House charter. So just some distinctions between the two. The Oxford House, these are the main distinctions, but Oxford House they operate like sober living spaces for the model that they run is a self-regulated, self-accountable, independent household where there is a zero tolerance policy for alcohol and drug use, where violation of that policy results in the individual being expelled from the house. The VARR is the Virginia State affiliate with the National Association of Recovery Residences. Those types of residences, they may offer potentially 4 levels of service that, with level 1 being akin to like the self-governing model that Oxford House uses, to level 4, which is there where they might have some staff who help manage the house and deal with the generally the life skills and the needs of the residents. There are no VAR certified houses in Arlington, and we have only identified 6 Oxford House recovery residences that are located in the county, of which 4 are certified and listed on the DBHDS list of certified recovery residences for the state. So part of the reason that, again, this text amendment is happening in the context of the reasonable accommodation is that the way that the zoning ordinance currently regulates one-family detached dwellings, which is the main housing type that the recovery residences are seeking to locate, is essentially a one-family dwelling can accommodate one family. And we have, in our zoning ordinance currently, 4 definitions for family, which are up on the slide now. I would call your attention to like the third one, 8 or less unrelated persons with mental illness, intellectual disability, or developmental disability licensed by the Virginia Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Services. So this has been again one of our guiding stars in drafting our proposed regulations for the recovery residences. Again, these are facilities that are licensed by DBHDS. They also typically have what are called resident or non-resident staff residing there, so providing care for the services or to the residents. And so, but again, like this is the model like we've been following because this is the most congruous use in our zoning ordinance. But again, because the recovery residences, are not licensed, they're just certified, we really can't they really don't fall under like the auspices of this definition of family. So in considering like both the scope of this proposed amendment and the actual amendments, we looked at what other jurisdictions in the Commonwealth were doing and wanted to see how they aligned with our proposal of allowing 8 or fewer unrelated persons to occupy residential dwellings. And so this is what these jurisdictions up here are all, their local zoning regulations, their zoning provisions would essentially allow a recovery residence with 8 or fewer persons by right in a dwelling. Just the two that I have italicized on there, the city of Alexandria and Harrisonburg, I guess it bears noting that, so the city of Alexandria has recently made changes to their zoning regulation where they have essentially, they don't place any restriction at all on the number of unrelated persons that can occupy a dwelling. Again, this is, a very recent, I think it was July it was adopted. And then as far as the city of Harrisonburg, they have regulations in their zoning ordinance that specifically identify recovery residences, and it's virtually identical to what we're proposing with our text amendment. And then there's some other jurisdictions that have a limit, or I guess a by right limit of 4 or less unrelated persons to be able to occupy a dwelling. However, some of the localities nearby, Fairfax County, Loudoun, they do have provisions where more than 4 unrelated persons can, through some kind of special use permit or special exception process, have more than 4 people occupy a dwelling. And then there are actually many jurisdictions in the Commonwealth that have restrictions like we do currently, where the number of unrelated persons that can occupy a dwelling is limited to 4, and they don't have any mechanism in their zoning provisions that would allow for more than 4 unrelated people to occupy a dwelling. And again, like the notable local example would be Prince William County. And so as far as like moderating the scope of this text amendment, you may or may not be aware that there are recommendations in the Affordable Housing Master Plan that identifies the dwelling occupancy limits as a point for further study. The Planning Division anticipates commencing a study on this sometime in 2025. But And so this mitigating factor, this potential upcoming zoning study, it was something we kept in mind as far as like maintaining the scope for our proposed amendment, which again is to address a reasonable accommodation. And so like, and it's kind of why we did not do a more expanded study on other types of households to exceed the standing four-person limit. Also, in considering the scope, there is House Bill 646. So this was a bill introduced in the 2024 legislative session, specifically about recovery residences, and essentially it would modify or make an addition to Code of Virginia, Section 15.2-2291. This is a section of the state code that essentially requires localities who have zoning ordinances to allow certain types of households to be allowed under their zoning regulations and that they be treated as single-family residents. So this is where the provisions for 8 or fewer developmentally disabled persons residing in a household started in 1990, and this is also where the assisted living of 8 or less persons. So this is again something that is currently matriculating through the legislature down in Richmond, but again, we took this into consideration in drafting the language and moving the in considering the scope of what we wanted to accomplish with this text amendment. So this is a listing of the community engagement we've done since since July, when this first went to the zoning committee and it went to the county board for request to advertise. And so our recommendation is that we will recommend that the county board adopt the proposed amendment at the October hearing to define recovery residence, allow by right for 8 or fewer and 1 family detached, and allow 9 or more or non-1 family detached by use permit. In reaching out to the Community Services Board and the Substance Use Committee, we want to allow for some time to hear back from them. They expressed some interest in this amendment going forward. However, they are on recess in August, so we just want to be able to give them some more time to have their feedback on this proposed amendment. And so that's why we will be recommending to the county board defer this to October to allow for additional time for feedback from the Community Services Board. And so yeah, any questions? I know I kind of went through quickly, and I'm sure if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we go to public comment. No? Okay.
Our first in-person speaker is Terry Amayo.
Okay, thank you, Terry. You have 2 minutes as soon as you get.
Turn this on? No.
It's already on. I'm not sure if you can adjust for height.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I actually found 2 more, which I'm going to give Cliff. I have one address and one I don't, but I'm going to give it to him. So we found 8 houses, 4 are certified and 4 are not. and some of them have 9 people in them. And I will definitely give you that. I sent this via email earlier today, and this was a FOIA that one of our neighbors did in Penrose, and it was not an Oxford house, but it was called Community Residences, and it was supposed to be monitored by DHS, and it was supposed to have a live-in person there. None of that happened at all. And this poor individual spent 2 years of contacting DHS, the county board, and various staff and got absolutely nowhere. And on his FOIA, there's 26 incident reports in a 2-year period. But he also told me that a lot of the times the police came, they didn't file a report, and then several were referred to criminal prosecution, so they didn't make this. So he told me they were calling every single week to report disturbances, knife fights, drug dealing out the front door, trash cans wheeled out to the street every week, overflowing with liquor bottles, and this was supposed to be a recovery house. So he didn't have a lot of luck until he contacted our neighborhood association, and the executive committee stepped in to help him, and in 3 months, they had to shut the house down because they couldn't bring it to order. It was literally impossible, and he was terrified to even let his kids out the front door. So he moved. He couldn't take any more. Even after it was resolved, he just couldn't take it. Am I out of time? I thought I had 3 minutes.
You have 2 minutes. I can give you 30 more seconds.
Okay. Well. So there are no background checks done on the residents that include a violent history, which I have a real problem with that. I have a friend, I sent you the news article, and last year in September, her nephew was slaughtered, literally slaughtered violently by his own father, who had a psychotic break. His own father stepped away for 3 hours, and when he came home, he found his own 37-year-old mentally ill son who told him, "Don't go in the house because I killed somebody." And in fact, he had killed his own child, 16 years old, with an angle grinder. And so in 3 hours after the father left, the guy had a psychotic break. You never know when something's going to happen. And as well as we have sympathy for people who need help, and we want to help people who need help, we can't put other people in danger also. So there has to be the right balance to make sure that both sides have a good outcome, because we don't want people to relapse and we don't want neighbors getting hurt. Okay, thank you. By the way, I like the Fairfax County approach. 4 and then a use permit. Anyway, thank you.
Yep, thank you. Any other public speakers?
Thank you. Our next speaker online is Thomas Gargan.
I guess, thank you. Can you hear me, first of all?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, fantastic. I'm going to leave the camera off because sometimes it causes connectivity issues. So speaking for myself and fellow members of the Ballston Village Homeowners Association, we are strongly opposed to the zoning text amendment in its current form, as it does not include the limitation on proximity that our community requested. The staff statement that recovery residences are most comparable to group residential facilities for persons with developmental disabilities is misplaced. Those facilities are licensed by the Virginia Department of Behavioral Health and Development, and they have 1 or more resident or non-resident staff on premises. Recovery residences lack both licensure and staffing. They are run by the residents with little oversight. Therefore, they are more comparable to a group house. As the staff is aware, there are 6 Oxford House recovery residences operating in Arlington County. According to a FOIA request, over the past 30 months, these 6 recovery residences have had 76 visits from police, fire, and rescue. 53 visits were police calls, and 37 calls were between the hours of 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. The 2 recovery houses located side by side on North Stewart Street have alone had 38 visits from police, fire, and rescue, 27 visits were police calls, and 20 calls were between the hours of 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. Some visits were in connection with assault, destruction of property, disorderly conduct, fighting, drunken public, and trespassing, among others. The Fair Housing Act requires an accommodation for persons with handicaps if the accommodation is reasonable, necessary, to afford the handicapped persons equal opportunity to use and enjoy housing. It is neither reasonable nor necessary that two recovery residences be located side by side. Therefore, we request that the Planning Commission reject the staff proposal and direct the staff to modify the amendment to restrict group homes, including recovery residences, from being located within 375 feet of another if they lack both licensure and staffing and house more than 5 unrelated persons. This type of proximity restriction has been upheld against Oxford House in other jurisdictions and in federal court. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Margaret Fibble, followed by Katie Steinbrug.
I'm Margaret Fibble. I've lived in Arlington for over 40 years, and for the last 24 years, I've lived in Lyon Park in a single-family home. I support community-based programs for persons overcoming alcohol and or drug abuse. It takes a lot of courage and determination to do that, and I admire that. But I think it's appropriate for Arlington County to define a recovery residence, but I urge you to adopt the alternative language in the draft report to the county board, which would require a special use permit for recovery residences with as few as 5 residents. This would address 2 issues I have with the otherwise recommended language. So the first is that 8 adults sharing a typical small 3-bedroom, 2-bath Arlington County house is far too many people. And I looked at the information that was not in the draft report and was not discussed in the staff report to see the size of the existing Oxford Houses facilities and compared that with the information that's in the county property records, and they're all small. And I want you to be clear that if you approve the recommended language and the board agrees with you, you will be authorizing up to 8 adults to share small 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom houses. In general, allowing this by right instead of requiring a use permit is, in my view, anti-democratic. It removes notice to the neighbors and a hearing at which both the facility organizers and the neighbors can express their concerns and an independent body can make a decision. I would think that organizations like Oxford House would welcome having yearly feedback and accountability mechanism that the special use permit enables. Thank you.
Thank you. Our last speaker is Katie Steinbrug.
Katie Steinbrug, are you available for your public comment? Okay, so then I guess we'll move on. That's it for public speakers? Were there any commissions that wanted to speak to this topic? No.
This came in front of
and
ZOCO in July. Commissioner Streiner was kind enough to chair on my behalf.
Okay, Commissioner Streiner.
Yeah, so, I mean, a lot of the major themes that we covered at ZOCO were covered in the presentation as well as some of the comments that we've heard thus far. Really, this is to get the county in compliance with the Federal Fair Housing Act. The 1988 amendments to that act require that, define people who are dealing with substance and alcohol addictions are people with handicaps. And so we have to be in alignment with that law, we have to provide them with a reasonable accommodation for housing. That's really the genesis of this. And again, as the presentation kind of outlined, a lot of these all of these residences are self-sufficient. Everyone involved needs to pay their own rent, utilities, all that sort of thing, and they live together in a substance and alcohol-free environment. And as soon as somebody breaks that rule, they're out. Now, the issues that were discussed already in the public comment really center around monitoring and enforcement of this policy. There appears, on paper, this system is pretty solid, but in practice, sometimes there are some issues here. And so while that is beyond the scope of the zoning change per se, it is still germane to this sort of topic, as it is a product of this, and it's something that staff has looked into before, during, and after our ZOCO meeting, and we'll hear more from them, I'm assuming, with questions we'll ask tonight. So that's the general gist of the ZOCO meeting on July 16th.
Okay, thank you. So to the commission for discussion, do we have topics that we want to discuss? Commissioner Bagley?
Process after certification.
And like enforcement?
Yes.
Monitoring enforcement? Okay. Any other topics for tonight? Okay, well then, let's go to that. Commissioner Bagley, do you want to ask the first question or make the first comment?
I think it's fair to say most of us want to have facilities that help and encourage people who are going through, drug and alcohol addiction and recovery. We want to have that happen. And again, I agree with Commissioner Striner. Some of these discussions are now beyond even what this is intended to do, but they have to be had because, we're hearing so many problems or so many issues that are coming up, which, as in one of the things that you pulled up, you said that there were local outreach coordinators monitoring. Who are they, and how do you find them, and what do they do? And
yes. So Oxford House, the way they, so Oxford House's model of self-governance is what they do is they grant a charter to a house. They will not grant a charter for less than 6 people because they've been doing these recovery residences for approximately 35 years, and so their experience has, demonstrated that fewer than 6 people is not an effective, cohesive group to provide the support that the residents need. And so the way the house is run, they have a democratically run model, which means that they have people in the house. People will take turns, 6-month stints, I think it is, where they will kind of like, for lack of a better term, be like head of household. So they would be responsible for making sure that bills are paid on time. That they also will represent the house in what's called a chapter. So Oxford House, for their chartered houses, they will organize somewhere between 6 and 13 houses into what they call chapters. And so these chapters are kind of they kind of provide like a support network across the houses. So like they will meet monthly, usually at a central location, and then there'll be representatives from the different houses that'll rotate to different houses every month to kind of discuss issues and problems they're having with maintaining the household or dealing with troublesome members of the household. So it's kind of the support system, and so Oxford House, they have dedicated staff, outreach staff, who participate in these meetings. They're also available to residents to, again, like receive help in dealing with problems that arise, getting them access to the resources they need to follow the Oxford House system of recovery. And so another part that falls under their responsibilities is that they will speak with the community, speak with neighbors when there are issues. The problem, again, and this is from my conversations with some of the outreach coordinators at Oxford House, is that a lot of times when there's a problem with the property, these are usually rented. So, when the problem, when somebody has a concern or complaint, they will go to the landlord as opposed to, because that's, because they may be unaware that this is an Oxford House. But that being said, Oxford House has expressed, a willingness and interest to, address concerns and issues that neighbors have to the extent that they're able to, given that, that they, one of the tenets, they call it a tradition in their recovery system, is being a good neighbor. And so part of that is, they're kind of aware of some of the stereotypes that are attributed to residents concerning safety and behavioral issues. And so, and Oxford House takes this, they take this, having a reputation of not being, problematic in neighborhoods very seriously. So they, the model is for the house to regulate itself, but when issues become, behavioral issues become problematic in that house being a good neighbor, they are willing to intervene and, speak with the residents or, take what action they can. Again, not everything can be, mitigated, but they, they are willing to again, to speak with neighbors in the community when issues do arise, but they do need to be made aware of them. So again, when we met on August 21st with Oxford House staff, we did provide the neighbors at the houses on North Stort Street with contact information, 3 members of staff at Oxford House, so that they can, again, if there are behavioral, some of the things that, were concerned were congregating on the porch and, things of that nature. So again, one of the representatives, he did take notes, many notes of, the concerns and and he did offer to kind of, address the issues the behavioral issues that he could. So I don't,
yeah.
Sorry. I don't know if that's answering.
Starting to.
Okay.
So based on some of the things that we've heard from residents, I think it's tremendous, and thank you for having a meeting with them and for, going out and giving contact information to the neighborhood. Communication, prevents so many problems down the road. And I know that we're not here to discuss that tonight, but in all fairness to, recommending approval of this without having all this baggage that might come, it does need to kind of be discussed. Maybe we need to, I guess at the end of the day, so you get the state certification, everything. So who is responsible if there are problems? Does the neighborhood just call the police? Does, what does DHS do, or Department of Human Services? I just feel like there's a breakdown somewhere between this certification and, how often are inspections? Just for the edification of the neighbors who I believe probably want to see a successful, facility there.
Yeah. Well, as far as the inspections, Oxford House they do, I think he said annual inspections. They will go into, again, and this is about the maintenance of the property. They don't want their residents, renting a dangerous or dilapidated space. Again, but they are renters, so there is some, and Oxford House isn't even really party to the rental, the lease between the residents, the Oxford House, and the landlord. But So he did say that they will like inspect annually, and often it's part of their annual certification with the Virginia Department of Behavioral Health. So, and I'm sorry, I think you had another question.
Yeah, I just, as I toy with this in my own mind, I want to compliment, because I know we had several discussions after the last meeting about, there's missing pieces here that need to be talked to make sure that as these get approved, that they have the greatest ability to be successful.
Yeah.
And part of that is, again, is the communication, but I think we've made some good baby steps here, but I think we need to, if we're going to take on the responsibility of expanding this type of capability in the county, that we also have the responsibility to make sure that, not just for the neighbors, but also for the folks who are trying to turn their lives around, that we make this as good as possible for them. And right now I'm feeling still a little nebulous about the whole thing, and it's troublesome to me,
So, I mean, given that we know, like in zoning, that there is this disconnect between Oxford House and the community, and so I mean, one of the things that will help alleviate that is us in zoning kind of being just more cognizant of the fact that we know that we have these 6, or however many, there are, it's really a matter of, so like when we do receive a call for, again, like the calls we received for, these properties on North Stewart Street, we can be like, oh, that is, a recovery residence, and, if there's property complaints over crowd, whatever they are, it's kind of a process we're going to have to put in place just to be more cognizant and aware of the fact that, like this is a special situation, and and we can, we haven't had discussions about it yet, but I mean, assuming this is, this would be something that we would kind of communicate with our the zoning enforcement staff, but then also be able to communicate to other, when we have, residents call with concerns or issues, being able to connect them with, excuse me, the appropriate people in planning. And I would also mention that, so under this proposed definition and these amendments, so establishing a recovery residence is what's considered a change of use in the zoning ordinance, which means that they would need to obtain a certificate of occupancy. So the certificate of occupancy would be contingent upon the recovery residents demonstrating that they are certified by the Virginia Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Services. So we would have, I guess, a more fulsome listing of of what's out there as far as these recovery residences that would allow us to, again, be more just aware of, like these are here, and when there are problems, being able to connect, the concerned parties with Oxford House. Or, I mean, again, if we were to have a VARR certified residence, like keeping, like relevant contact information for them. But again, we don't have a procedure down yet, but like once, it would be something that we would do.
Moving, I'm cognizant the hour is getting late, so I'd like to keep us going. I'd actually like Commissioner Guevara to jump in. I think she's been trying to ask a question. You've had a few. So Commissioner Guevara, and then we'll do another circle back. But I do want to keep things moving. Thank you.
Commissioner Patel is waiting also.
Okay, so Commissioner Guevara, Commissioner Patel, and then Commissioner Streiner, and then we'll kick back to Commissioner Bagley if there's not anyone else. And after Commissioner Lynn, tell me. Commissioner Guevara, you have the floor.
Yes. Question. So it seems, is there a deadline? I know we want to get in line with sort of the federal outlines requirements, but it seems to me as if you're asking us to approve this, but there hasn't really been a process developed, right? Because right now it seems as from what I'm hearing from the neighbors that there's a lot of complaints that haven't been addressed. And so I'm just wondering, would it make more sense to develop the sort of the framework first and then see how that's working out and then increase, or would it be similar to what Fairfax did to do before and then a special use permit? What's stopping you guys from considering those as options?
So as far as like a deadline, we do have open compliance cases that cannot move forward in any way until this is resolved. So I mean, again, not really a deadline. But again, it's a consideration that we need to we do have these open compliance cases, and they're kind of in limbo. Like we can't move forward with them, but we can't close them. We can't pursue enforcement, until this issue is resolved. So again, not really a hard deadline. And then as far as like the broader, so the scope of what we're proposing under the reasonable accommodation is really about the land use, and so we didn't really. Because these aren't really land use issues as far as like the behavioral elements, the like the oversight by DHS or police or any other like body, that would, kind of like regulate the behaviors in the property, because this is, at least as what we're presenting, this is, a land use. We looked at the land use impacts, and in that context, these are essentially households that have more than 4 unrelated persons residing there. So like, these aren't like treatment facilities. They're not like halfway houses or any kind of, more, I don't want to, like more structured, type of housing, right? So, these are just people who are, trying to, maintain sobriety. The purpose is, to move into the recovery residence, like establish these good habits, and then eventually move out, and be more self-sufficient on their own. Yeah.
Commissioner Guevara, did you get an answer?
I did.
Great.
Okay.
Commissioner Patel. Commissioner Patel, you're up.
Thank you. So I just want to kind of make sure that, well, one, I want to express my support of making sure that we understand the landscape of what is going on here. And I appreciate Commissioner Striner kind of putting it in context about a compliance issue with federal statute. But additionally, I think the county itself is trying to increase the opportunities for people to be able to receive necessary step-down programming. So I think what we need to also be clear about, as staff has just pointed out, is that this is ultimately step-down programming, right? It's services that are not treatment related, and is focused on allowing these types of structures to exist. And, in order for us to be able to, we can talk about a public safety component. On the one hand, if somebody is, congregating on the porch or whatever the issues might be, but there is a public safety component when you do not have these types of structures that are available, or opportunities that are available for people who cannot then effectively step down and still have scaffolding of support through licensed programs. And so, I think that we, kind of thinking about where we are procedurally, this is a zoning ordinance, and we're thinking about enforcement of individual units or structures or individual behavior. There are other enforcement mechanisms for that. But a zoning ordinance allows us to online this type of service, which is a benefit not just to those who are receiving the service, but it is a benefit to the community at large. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Patel. I appreciate the feedback on that. I don't remember the order of people that I went in, but I'm pretty sure it was Commissioner Streiner, and then Commissioner Lentelmi, and then we'll go with Commissioner Peterson, then we'll go with Commissioner Weir, and then I'll go back to Commissioner Bagley. Everyone is getting 2 minutes. We're going out of here at 10 p.m., and we still have another item after this, just for the record. Thank you. And no follow-up questions without my permission.
You got it. Okay, so in terms of the demands of these kind of resources, a similar facility, say something like for assisted living or people with developmental disabilities, do they get a similar number of police reports, calls compared to these kind of sites or recovery residences, or are they kind of the same? Is there a difference? You know, is there increased demand for these, or increase in activity for recovery residences compared to other acts or just types of facilities that fall under this Federal Fair Housing Act?
They're comparable. So we reached out to police for data on calls for service for the 6 Oxford houses in the county and 6 DDI, developmentally disabled group homes of 8 or less, for a 2-year period from August 2022 to August 2024. There was a total of, I think it was 56 for the Oxford houses and 45 for the DDI homes. We asked police if this is a, staff's opinion was that, this is a comparable increase in the level of calls between the two to justify that treating these two as similar uses.
Similar, yeah.
When we spoke with police about, is this, is this an excessive increase in the frequency of calls? He said no, and it's more than the typical single-family dwelling, but it's not. He expressed that compared to a night in Clarendon, we'll have more than this in just one night. So again, it wasn't anything that police found alarming as far as a problem.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's good to hear that you're talking with the police and other departments too.
Thank you. If I remember my own list correctly, we are going to Commissioner Lentelmi next.
Are the existing Oxford houses in the county, which apparently we have a number of them, are they already out of compliance because they have more people, unrelated people living in them than is otherwise allowed in a single-family house?
Yes. That being said, is that the populations, there are vacancies as people move out and move in, and so, it's possible that there is an Oxford house that has a capacity of 8 people, but there may only be 4 people in there currently because they have 4 vacancies. Strictly speaking,
they could have 8 people. They would go ahead and put 8 people in if they had 8 people willing to live there.
But yeah, these are all, anything more than 4 would not, they're in.
But we've never taken any enforcement action to say that, no, you can't do this.
No. What would happen is what has happened with the recovery residences on North Stewart Street. Again, zoning enforcement received a report over occupancy, and so when they investigated, that's how this kind of became, on our radar, and the enforcement action was initiated. So, but yeah, I would say, these 6 Oxford houses are all not compliant with the zoning ordinance.
So it strikes me that, we have to. You're saying we have to change this in order to make us compliant with the Federal Housing Act. X. Okay, fine. Would use permit structure also be compliant with the federal law?
I suppose it would.
Would that give us an additional enforcement tool if we used a use permit? Sorry, but this is sort of logical. I'm a lawyer, what can I say?
Yes, I mean, yeah, that would be a path forward for the reasonable accommodation.
The concern I have here is the zoning ordinance is not exactly the best way to deal with the issues that the neighbors are definitely seeing are very real problems. You know, I wouldn't want to live next door to it if that's going on either.
Okay.
But we have to get, you know, and the use permit, I get the problem with that because you'd have to, it's bureaucratic to be able to get that. It's not easy to do. That said, we have to, in good faith to these neighbors, have to get some sort of real enforcement mechanism that they can make a complaint in a timely basis, have it addressed in a timely basis, and have some real sanctions that could end up solving the problem if it's an ongoing problem. They shouldn't have to be living for years with something like this on an ongoing basis. You know, I'm sort of torn with this. You know, when we're at ZOCO, I was saying, yeah, I see, go ahead with this. But right now, I'm not sure how we really need to deal with this because I'm not getting any warm fuzzies that this is going to be able, how are we going to deal with what apparently is a very real problem that the neighbors of these houses are raising. I'm leaving it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll align myself with Commissioner Lantelmi's comments and remind myself of the order of people. I think it's Peterson next, then Weir, then Bagley. Peterson, you're up.
Yeah, so I think these recovery houses have great potential to provide an important service to the community across the country and in Arlington. We continue to have a substance abuse crisis. Looking back about 10 years ago, total opioid overdoses were 10, and then last year they were 73. So, and including 22 fatalities. So we definitely as a community want to do as much as we can to help people, you know, on the path to recovery. I'm a little concerned about some of the process, though, for this, looking at these changes. So we're looking at doing this to comply with the Fair Housing Act, but the policy we're proposing isn't what a lot of our surrounding communities are proposing, so why don't they have to comply with the Fair Housing Act? And then why is this happening so quickly? You know, it went to ZOCO in July. Questions were asked. It sounds like they haven't been resolved yet. It went to the Disability Advisory Commission was informed, Community Service Board, Substance Abuse Committee was informed, but weren't given a chance to reply yet, so that we don't have their input when we're making the decision tonight. The county board is hearing it in October, so theoretically we could have heard it in October so that we could have maybe had more time to hear from these important commissions about what they think about these proposed changes. So I'm just kind of wondering about the process tonight and why it's happening, playing out this way. Thank you.
So as far as other communities, I mean, I can only speculate, but I mean, I don't, like, so for instance, like Prince William County, who has similar regulations that we have, it's entirely possible that they have not received a complaint that, or the subsequent, you know, reasonable accommodation. Again, just speculation, but as far as for us here in Arlington, you know, like, you know, or at least in zoning, like, again, you know, this is the relevant language about households and families and definitions for families, you know, are pretty clear in relation to into recovery residences. So, I mean, like, the zoning administrator, you know, has a lot of leeway to interpret the ordinance, but again, like, you know, the regulations are pretty clear and specific, and the only, well, I shouldn't say the only, but, like, you know, like the most direct way to grant the accommodation is to have this zoning text amendment. So as far as the like the timeline, you know, again, like, there is this outstanding compliance, zoning compliance case that, you know, it does need to be resolved. And again, like, when drafting the the proposed amendment, the scope, we kind of really wanted it to be specific to what Oxford House had submitted in their reasonable accommodation request, which again was, up to 8 persons to be treated as a single-family dwelling. So, but again, we also tried to, keeping in mind, the potential, affordable housing study and those other, House Bill 646, we just, we're trying to navigate this amendment to both meet the reasonable accommodation, but also keep in mind these other potential land use studies.
Commissioner Peterson, do you feel that your question has been answered?
I still don't understand why we are hearing it tonight instead of next month if there's more time to hear from the commissions for their input. But
well, originally in July, the board had advertised this to be heard at the September hearing. So that's the path we've been following.
So the county board was supposed to hear this in September, and it got pushed on their schedule, but that doesn't address the question of why it hasn't gone to all the other commissions that have been notified but not had a full hearing yet.
Yeah, I'm sorry, could you repeat?
Disability Advisory Committee was informed about this but hasn't gotten a chance to reply because they were in recess in August, and same with the Community Services Board Substance Use Committee.
So actually, the Disability Advisory Committee, they met on the 19th, and I'm waiting to hear back with the results of that.
They met in August?
From the yeah, August 19th.
That's just unusual because most commissions are in recess in August.
But in any case, I guess I'm just saying it's disappointing that we didn't hear from them about their opinions about this, the appropriateness of this policy for Arlington, since those two committees would have a lot of relevant comments for us. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Commissioner Weir.
So I probably would not be here today if it weren't for a very dear friend of mine who absolutely would not be here today but for a specific recovery residence in the DMV. So this is fairly cut and dry for me. We should let personal misconduct be regulated by ordinance and laws that govern personal misconduct, and let zoning focus on separating uses. And at its core, we're talking about whether it's okay for 8 people to live in a housing type among neighbors where it's already not at all uncommon to see 8 people living in a unit. So this is about opportunities to bring desperately needed supply online, especially given that the alternative is so often to have these people move on the street. That being said, given that the board will be hearing it in October and that we haven't heard from some relevant commissions, I would be happy to come back here in a month to take advantage of the schedule, especially if that lets us get more information on things like how complaints would be dealt with. But in light of the fact that Falls Church and Alexandria both allow these by right, and in light of possible or even likely legislative trends, I candidly don't see myself being persuaded off of the by right alternative.
Thank you, Commissioner Weir. Commissioner Bagley? And then I will recognize myself.
I don't necessarily need a response on this, but I do want to compliment you on treading into very difficult waters and coming through and certainly making more progress since the meeting that we had in the summer about this. But and again, to Commissioner Weir's point, we want to expand these capabilities. However, there's a moral obligation to make sure it's done properly, and we're missing that piece right now, in my opinion, and this is why I'm not going to be able to support it this evening. Thank you.
Piggybacking off of Commissioner Bagley's comments, I do, and off of the kind of process questions that Commissioner Peterson raised, it does seem like, I understand that there's been this sort of, non-compliance issue that's been determined and we need to move quickly. It does seem that maybe some of the information that we would like, it would benefit this commission to hear is not ready for that conversation yet. And so I do think that it feels like things are going a little bit out of order, which is a concern to me. I anticipate abstaining from the vote tonight because of those concerns, so that we can hopefully get some additional information in place. I don't abstain very often, so when I do, I like to sort of explain my reasoning behind that, which is why I've made this statement.
Same what you just did.
Recognizing Commissioner Lantelmi.
I'm going to be voting against this, not because I don't support it, because thinking about it, by right is the correct way to go, because we want to remove bureaucratic obstacles to getting, as Commissioner Weir said, desperately needed type of housing for people that really do need to have these services. So, but it's not ready. We have to hear from other commissions. I'd like to hear from the police department, to hear the statistics on calls, legitimate calls, about all these various houses. I think this information our county board really has to have before they can make an informed choice on this. So I'll vote against it in the hope that this information can be gathered, we can get the hearing from the other commissions, and then bring it back to us when we have that, and then I'd be happy to vote for it if we can find some way to also give better enforcement to the concerns that neighbors are running into with these very houses. So that's why my vote is going to be negative tonight, not necessarily in the future.
I'm cognizant of the late hour, so brief comments on the question period is over. Commissioner Weir.
Yeah, if we know with this to a certainty that the county board isn't going to be handling this until its October meeting, I think that both the appropriate and in order action, rather than doing an up or down on the matter to dispose of it tonight, if the sense is that we're not ready, would be simply to entertain a motion to defer to our October meeting.
I would vote for that.
I'm fine with you making that. Recognize Commissioner Patel, and then Commissioner Patel, sorry, I didn't have my mic on, but I'm recognizing you. That's my bad.
Thank you. I just want to go on record and say that I will vote against a motion to defer this matter tonight for all of the reasons that Commissioner Weir has already articulated. To the extent that this matter went before ZOCO, and if there were any concerns about what this means on a public safety level, there could have been a second ZOCO meeting. I will say that I know the Oxford House model, not personally, but professionally. Oxford House is used many times for people who are receiving services through the CSB, who are receiving services through our partners at DHS. And for many people, as Commissioner Weir has said, this is a lifeline to be able to provide necessary stability in terms of housing, and to be able to have gainful employment and to be able to move on from their lives. I think that this supposition that for some reason that these places carry more public safety concerns is not borne out by the facts that have already been presented to us by county staff. There are not more calls at these locations than any other place. And I will just say this for the record, it gives me a lot of concern to the extent that it is portrayed, and I know my colleagues are not portraying it that way, but to the extent that any reports are written and there's this, innuendo that we believe that there is some inherent public safety risk that comes from these types of programs, that just simply is not borne out by the statistics and the police reports and the facts and which are publicly available. Any one of us can go on right now and see what the arrests and calls look like. And so I will vote against a deferral, and if to the extent that we are not deferring the matter, I would vote in favor of the proposed recommendation.
Thank you, Commissioner Patel. I think we're going to move to motions now. Does anyone have a motion they would like to make? If no one has motions, we can't leave.
I can make the county recommended motion, but I just don't have it in front of me.
Excuse me,
Yes, Madam Clerk.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry. Cliff Stephen is on the line. Do you need him to respond to any of the questions or anything?
No, unless he wants to, but
Okay, he hasn't said anything. I just wanted to make sure. Stephen?
I just wanted to say that I think Cliff did a great job handling the questions tonight, and I have nothing further to add.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I can make a motion to defer.
Okay.
Start with that.
Commissioner Lantelmi would like to make the first motion. We'll start there.
I move that the planning commission.
But I'm sorry, Commissioner Lattumby, I don't know if it's proper to move a motion to defer a matter, because I would like to proceed on the motion. So if you're deferring it, then that would not allow me to make the motion.
Okay, Commissioner Patel, are you prepared to make a motion?
Yeah, I just need someone to put it on the screen.
I did not hear that. Did anyone else catch that?
I just need somebody to put it, I don't know if Commissioner Streiner has it. I just need it to be put on the screen, or if
I don't
staff
have
can
it
put that
with me.
last slide up.
It can't be put on the screen.
Oh,
The PowerPoint is it not part of the PowerPoint?
I think the staff presentation maybe is what Commissioner Patel is referring to.
Right.
Okay.
Commissioner Weir has the language, and I believe Commissioner Weir is willing to make them. Oh, no, wait, it's coming up on the screen. Maybe
Sorry.
something is.
I texted it to you, Commissioner Patel.
Unfortunately,
I think-
Kingston is using my phone.
Commissioner Patel, I believe Commissioner Peterson has texted you the motion, so you can perhaps read it from that.
I can't. Unfortunately, Kingston has got my phone, so
Okay.
Do you want me to just
apologize.
Maybe
make
he
the
can read
staff
it.
motion? I'm happy to do that.
thank you.
Commissioner Weir is going to make the staff motion. I believe that will satisfy the current stalemate.
Just as a,
Fantastic.
as a-
Thank you.
can I confirm that I heard Commissioner Patel correctly point out that we can't defer a motion that isn't before the committee, and that's why she wanted to, okay.
Yeah, this is a procedural. We're going to make this motion first,
Okay.
I believe.
Thank you to Commissioner Patel for catching that. So I move that the Planning Commission recommend that the county board adopt the ordinance attached to the ZOA 202405 staff report to amend, reenact, and recodify Articles 4, 5, 6, 7, 12, and 18 of the Arlington County zoning ordinance to define recovery residence and allow as a residential use by right for 8 or fewer residents in one family detached dwellings and subject to use permit approval for more than 8 residents and/or in other dwelling types.
Second.
Commissioner Patel seconds. I believe we've had significant discussion on this item already, so unless there's anything new to add to the discussion, we'll move to a
Do I have to
vote.
make the deferral motion now that this is out on the floor?
So would that supersede this motion, or do we have to vote on this one first?
Motion would defer the matter. A deferral motion would defer the matter before the body to a time identified in the motion to defer.
Okay, I want to, before we make that motion, I would like to say that in the event that this is to be deferred, if that is what comes to pass, if this comes back before the planning commission, I only want there to be new information, not a repeat of the presentation from this evening. We want to hear what the other county commissions have had to say. And, that I think should be the focus of what comes back before us. Since we want more information, I think that's a reasonable limitation to put.
Okay, I move that the planning commission defer the matter before us until our next scheduled meeting in October.
Second.
The motion has been seconded. Sorry. I believe that motion has also already been sufficiently discussed. And you've explained your position. Commissioner, tell me anything you wish to add? No? Okay. So now I believe we're voting on the deferral motion. Am I getting this right? Okay. Okay. Give me 1 second to orient myself. Okay, so voting on the deferral motion, Commissioner Weir.
Nay.
Commissioner Bagley.
Aye.
Commissioner Peterson.
Aye.
Commissioner Lantelmi.
Aye.
Commissioner Sarli.
Abstain.
Commissioner Streiner.
Nay.
Commissioner Guevara.
Abstain.
Commissioner Robertson.
Aye.
Commissioner Patel.
Nay.
Commissioner Steinberger, abstain. The deferral motion passes 4-3. So the motion is deferred until next month.
Next month.
Okay. All right. That motion supersedes the motion that was made by Commissioner Weir, which was the staff motion. Mr. Pfeiffer, I imagine that there's some sort of amazing write-up you're going to do for all of this that will make it make sense, great. Okay, I appreciate that. Huh?
I guess, does that mean we have to discuss this at SoCo, September 10th?
I don't know.
You should ask the Zoco chair about that.
Yeah, we can do it. I'll talk with Nick.
Okay. You should have a conversation with yourself then. Okay. All right, so I know that there have been some other motions potentially discussed or circulated on this item. I believe with a deferral motion, those motions are probably not ripe. Okay, I'm getting a sense that that's an accurate assessment. This is a complicated, difficult topic, and I think I appreciate the fulsome conversation that was held this evening. Commissioner Peterson, thank you for sitting in so that I can learn that I'm not allowed to send my child to school with nuts because of things.
Allergies.
Right. And I appreciate that, so thank you. Okay, I believe the last item on our agenda, Madam Clerk, can you call our final item for tonight's agenda?
Our final item is the approval of the July 8th and 11th meeting minutes.
Could someone remind me if one only attended one of those two, do we need to do them as separate votes? Because we might have had different
No.
attendees for the 2 nights?
No.
Okay.
You can still get unanimous consent.
Would someone like to make a motion for unanimous consent to accept the
Can I
meeting?
just ask a question?
Yes.
I sent some edits because there were some mistakes, so did those get updated?
Not while I was on vacation.
Okay, so the attendance was wrong on one of them, and
Just
there was-
email it. Can you email it to me again, Tinley, please? Okay, thank you.
I'm going to make a motion for unanimous consent to accept the meeting minutes with the edits pending by Commissioner Peterson.
Okay, thank you.
Any objections? All right, so moved. Mr. Pfeiffer, anything else you'd like to share with us?
Very briefly, is my mic on? Very briefly, I'd like to just say that we had a couple of staff updates. We have one new planner joining comprehensive planning, Nori Flores, who will be an associate planner assisting Jen Smith and her group. Another major update, many of you have heard now that Kelly Brown has left the county. She is now going to be the Director of Neighborhood Services in the city of Charlottesville. So good news for her, bad news for us. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, well, we are pleased to hear that staff is growing and sad to hear that staff is leaving. So appreciate that. Commissioner Weir?
There are a number of just really, really good Power BI-based dashboards that occasionally I see a link to. Some of them include neighborhood demographics. Some of them include, well, I can't remember the other examples, but every time I see one, I think, is there a list somewhere of the various Power BI dashboards? Because I feel like we would really eat them up. And if such a list exists, could you please circulate it to us at your convenience?
Yeah, we can look into that, definitely. Yep.
Any other items, any SPRC things we need to report on?
I just wanted to say thank you to Commissioner Robertson for agreeing to chair Novel Arlington Ridge SPRC and Commissioner Sarli for agreeing to co-chair that project.
Wonderful. We love having chairs and co-chairs for our SPRCs. Okay, on that note, I will gavel us out, and I appreciate everyone's time this evening. Thank you.
Thank you.